authoritative.
Clerk will call the roll.
B. Glenn Whitley, County
Here.
Judge. Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Bickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Before we get started, just wanted to catch you before you got too far along in this deal. I would like to just recognize the fact that since our last meeting, we've had two of our court members who have celebrated birthdays.
Oh, Lord.
J.D., the 39th anniversary of his 40th.
Thank you.
And Roy, I'm not sure, somewhere north of...
It's the 28th anniversary of my 40th.
So with that, both congratulations. We're not singing. Thank you. Just because it'll be a whole lot better to start the day off without a melody in this particular instance. So with that, Mr. Manius, I'll turn it over to you.
We accept your birthday wishes, Mr. Manning.
I was going to say, happy birthday, Commissioner and Commissioner.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, you're right. It's a good thing we're not singing this morning. That's not necessarily the best way to start a Monday morning. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the FY18 budget. We're going to use the process that we have historically used as far as the initial presentation. Just like to make a few comments, though, before we get into our presentation. First of all, I want to really thank Debbie Schneider and the Budget Office for working very diligently in putting this thing together. But on top of that, the Auditor's Office has played a key role because while we received our July 25th tax roll on July 25th, there was a lot of pieces that were missing, mainly in the area of calculations dealing with the TIFs. And the TIFs require, we need those numbers in order to calculate the effective tax rate and other calculations that we work with the tax office to do. And Ron, thank you for what your people did on helping us get through that. The last couple of 3 or 4 days have been pretty aggressive in all these departments simply because what we're trying to do is to deliver to you a budget this year that does several things. First of all, it continues to decrease the tax rate. We're giving another penny up as far as the tax rate is concerned. Some people say, well, what's a penny? A penny is 3.8% decrease in the tax rate itself. If you calculate that with what we did last year, you're almost at 8% of what you've decreased the tax rate, which...
How much total revenue is that? How much are we giving back to the taxpayers?
Every penny is about $17 million.
So last year and this year we give back $34 million.
Actually, if you look at last year's compared with this one, we gave $32.5 million back to the taxpayers.
Thank you.
So, and you might recall also that as we move into the September timeline, when you all approved the budget, we gave you all a sheet last year that provides a pretty comprehensive review of how we actually compare to the other big six. And we've got our first draft ready. We're still refining some of that. But our trend at this court has been something that keeps us well within the lower brackets of the big six counties. And anywhere from the areas as far as the number of FTEs to the total number of population to the operating budgets piece as it relates to per capita within the county, we still maintain the lowest ratios of any of those, which speaks, once again, just great as far as what happens, not only to what you all do, but our participation and our collaboration with the other elected officials and department heads. So with that, let me start by going into some of the numbers that you have historically seen. And we'll start by talking about the net taxable value. One of the things that you'll see is that our taxable value has continued to grow. According to the July 25th numbers, our net taxable value is $170 billion. It grew just under $15 billion from last year. This speaks very highly as it relates to the status of our economy. Our unemployment rate is very low, one of the lowest in the state. Our economic development and the expansion of businesses and residences, and also new businesses and new residences that have come into the county have really had a significant impact on that. So that's what you're seeing there. When you look at the mineral leases, this is something that has continued to go down. In 2017, our mineral values were $828 million. That's a decrease from $906 million that we saw the year before. But with the prices of natural gas, which makes up the majority of our minerals, and also the fact that our fields are starting to diminish a little bit, we're seeing a decrease. That doesn't necessarily mean that Mr. Wright is seeing a decrease in the number of tax accounts related to minerals. This just represents the value of those tax accounts. Next, we're going to look at our tax rate. We talked a little bit about that. We continue to decrease our tax rate. You see that we had a decrease in 2016. This proposed tax rate that you see today is going to be 24.4 cents. We brought that down from 25.4 cents. When you compare us to other counties, just the county element of the tax rate, you see that we're the second lowest, even though we misspelled Tarrant on that slide, which we just noticed.
No, it's just not quite, that column's just not quite wide enough to get the T in.
Actually, we entered the T at the bottom. So
What I said, it's not quite wide enough to get the T in.
I told you the last 3 or 4 days were. But the interesting thing about this is I believe that when you add the hospital district's tax rate in there, the combined rates, we will have the lowest tax rate amongst the big six when you combine both the counties and the hospital districts, which, by the way, is the same taxpayer that contributes to those tax revenues. The new construction, this is a really good sign. We have a turnaround in the construction value that we're seeing. In 2016, that was about $2.6 million. In 2017, according to the July 25th roll, that value is about $3.7 billion. So we're seeing the economy increasing. We talked a little bit about the economic development aspect of it, and this is a good sign of what you're seeing, and that's a great reflection on how vibrant our economy really is. The average single-family home, once again, that value has increased. In 2016, it was $168,000. It has increased to $185,000. There's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, the appraisal process has, homes are going up in value, and that's a good sign. But also to that, we're also finding that there are more homes that are being built that have a greater value. So that all plays into that particular slide. So this is our tax rate history. You can tell that on the second column that we have held steady until 2016, where we had a decrease of a penny. In 2017, we're recommending that bottom number, 0.244. You see the average value of the value of the homes. Interesting thing to point out: if we would have held the current tax rate, The average tax on a home would have been $470 per year. Because of what we're proposing, it decreased. It's $451, though that still represents a slight increase of about $24 per the average household. And then finally, the procedure process that we'd like to go through today. We're going to ask you to take a preliminary vote on each of the budgets that are presented. I know that Ms. Snyder has gotten some material on some of the departments that are satisfied with their budget, but the vote would be yes to include whatever we decide today in the final budget, no to remove that from further consideration, or to be considered, TBC. And what that basically means is that it's not placed into the budget, but there needs to be some further consideration given to that as we move through the process, the budget process. And with that, I will turn it over to the county auditor.
One thing one of the things I just like to make a couple of comments on with regards to that. We have asked, and and State Representative Matt Krause actually filed, or I think it was a different one, I think he signed on, but maybe it was Shine, who actually filed a bill to allow us to do $1 homestead exemption versus a percentage. That has not gotten anywhere. We can't even get it to a hearing stage, but had we just been able to do that and put a $25,000 homestead exemption, it would have saved the taxpayers, instead of saving them around $1,850, it would have saved them about $80. So it would have been a significant difference, but we were not able to get the legislature to even think about or move to that. We talked about potential on a sales tax and a penny of sales tax, and then maybe reducing our property tax to 10 cents versus the 25.4, or what we're recommending of 24.4. That would have taken that 470 or the 451 number down to about $186 on an average home. So, again, if the legislature would look toward helping us with that and give us, a little bit of relief in that deal, it could make a significant difference to our property tax payers as far as the residential property and our citizens go. So you might remember those names, and next time you have a chance to talk with one of your legislators, encourage them to think about that. Homestead exemption or sales tax, and a blend of sales tax and property tax.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As Mr. Manius pointed out, it was a somewhat different year, trying to come up with things fairly close at the last minute. And there is still a lot of uncertainty in the economy, so if my crystal ball isn't quite what you think it is, we're open to discussion because we're still trying to finalize and nail all the numbers down. But we have several things to discuss with you this morning. If you start there on the first page, let's see if we can figure. All right. Then we have some footnotes at the bottom, and I'll just walk through some of that very quickly. The first little asterisk that's there on the investment income line item deals with the fact that the convention center loan was fully paid off in 2017, so there's no longer going to be payments received from the city of Fort Worth associated with that. Remind everyone then the next line item for all others with the two double asterisks is we always have the $5 million worth of contingency revenue that's included there. And then that we did use the proposed tax rate of the 0.244 on the tax line item there for taxes net of TIF. We are including a significant amount of money for the freeze. We're including $7.8 million of actual reduction of tax revenue for the potential for over 65s and disabled. There's been continuing trends both in this county and in Dallas County, and my friends in the tax office worked with us to help us do a calculation, and we feel that that's the best number we can have today for his uncertainty of what that number really is, because we just don't really have any way of knowing. If you turn 65 anytime during the year, you file, you get it for the full year, and it affects you the next year. And so obviously, as the baby boomers continue to age and the population of that percentage of people increase, it will increase the reduction to the tax available. As you come on down there, we also have some numbers. And the number one is we are pointing out that you have an item on the agenda for tomorrow that deals with making the refunds that was received late from the appraisal district. And so the portion of the $5 million in tax refunds that will be going out, $550,000 is our estimate of the county's portion of that. And so that's to be adjusted. And then also we are still looking at some numbers that we're finalizing for adjusting the tax number related to the TIFs. As Mr. Manny has pointed out, those numbers trickled in up to the last minute and continued to come in, so we're trying to make sure that we have those correct. With that said, for where we are today, we feel that that's a good estimate with those adjustments as mentioned. Does anybody have any questions? If not, I'll go to the next page. Yes, Glenn? Yes, sir, Judge.
On the revenue, and I've talked a little bit with Craig about this, but there's typically some things that I always kind of look at.
So you want me to go through the next slide and then you want to ask detail, or
That'll be fine
Okay.
if you'd rather do that.
Let's do that. Let's just walk through this one real quick as well then. So these are some of the components that we highlighted as far as things that either increased or decreased. Sales Tax Collection Commission, that is down this year. We don't expect that budget to actual is off about $300,000, so that is based with working with the tax office on the actual new car sales trends. There's just not as many new cars or the values of the cars being sold, so we expect a decrease in that number. Pretty much the constables and the county clerk, justice of the peace, et cetera, those are all based on actual trends and discussions with those departments. Again, it's kind of hard to know exactly what the crystal ball will show us next year, or whether home sales will continue to be strong, whether or not the economy will remain strong, whether or not there'll be any increase in interest rates, et cetera. So we work with the departments and look at the trends, and those are our estimates for those numbers. I'm sure the judge is going to ask me some details in some of the various departments. The criminal court fines are down. Greg's here if you'd like to have specific discussion about that, but we're just actually not collecting. I mean, those are actual collections, so it's based off trends and actual collections. So we're projecting a decrease in that. The prisoner care, they now have their own facility, so we don't anticipate that revenue will continue related to receiving money from the prisoner care. And I guess today I do have one adjustment that's positive this morning. We did go back and take a look at interest rates and interest income, and so I'm willing to make a $250 increase to that across the board.
You do mean 1,000, don't you?
Yes, 250,000, I'm sorry. Increase to that across all funds, and we'll finalize that between funds and finalize that. There's a lot of discussion about the debt ceiling and whether or not Congress is going to raise that in September. That creates uncertainty. There's a lot of discussion about, again, slowing of certain things in various areas. I've read articles where the Fed is also maybe talking about liquidating their balance sheet and selling off some of their treasuries. Again, my crystal ball is pretty cloudy, so we try to be conservative just to make sure that we don't ever have a revenue shortfall and have to come back to the court and tell you that we missed any of our numbers by a huge amount. But we are comfortable with increasing that today by that amount, and we'll continue to look at it. And then finally, this is the first year we have an increase for our building rental on 350 West Belknap, which we acquired. And then the same thing on the motor vehicle road and bridge fee. There's just a trend downward. There's just less collection of that particular fee. And while it's not noted on here, we do typically receive money for the flood money, and we typically have that, and we're still waiting on that. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are just not finalized this year that historically we've been able to have those numbers and know what those numbers were going to be. So with that, Judge, if you want to talk about specific accounts maybe before I go on to cash carry forward, or however you want to do it.
Yeah, that would be good. As I just kind of went down, again, this was kind of comparing the last couple of years to where we were and where we're projected to be this year. And just some general comments. I mean, we've talked before, and you mentioned about fines and stuff along that lines. In the constable areas, it just seems like most of those are in the ballpark, with the exception of Constable 5, and the fees are significantly lower than the other constables, by anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 to $400,000 difference there. District clerk's fees, we're estimating to be 3.7. They were 3.5 last in 16, and we're estimating at 3.4. So I know that we're close, but I also know that we're really looking for different things, and we've got a pretty tight budget from that standpoint. So I don't know if there's a possibility that we might be able to get a little bit more out of that. On the next page, court fines. Court 5 is, below 50,000. All the rest are closer to 200. And I realize that that's the domestic violence court, and so maybe that's the reason for that, but it just stands out. And then Judge Sorrells always leads the pack by usually more than $150,000 to $200,000, and that just, again, is, I'm sure there's a reason for it, but I hope we just kind of look into it to make sure that reason continues to hold good. You mentioned federal flood payments. That's down a couple $100,000, but it seems like we're estimating $600,000 in revenue this year. I don't know if there's any of those that you want to explain as I'm going along, then feel free to interrupt me.
Well, I guess the only thing I'd say in general is if we went back to the first comment on Constable 5, I did ask the constable as part of the audit in relation to his fees. It was pointed out to me that there are a smaller number of apartment complexes within that particular precinct for evictions and those types of fees, and that also, since a lot of the rental properties are single-family dwellings, that those individuals are less likely to probably come forward to pay the court cost and fines associated with the formal eviction process. Other than that, I can only say that the trend in the discussion with the department, which I don't know on that particular department, but we do look at the trend, and that department has historically, Constable 5 has historically been low, even before the current incumbent was in office. So we do look at that. We will certainly be happy to work with the district clerk. I feel like that we've used the historical trends, and we did have discussion with his staff and his department. So the numbers we presented were our best estimate at the time. I'll be happy to go back and revisit that with the district clerk. And then in regards to the courts, again, I think if you want to have Greg come up and talk about the courts, I'd be happy to.
Come on down. And maybe on the constables, I mean, if the evictions, you take statistics on the evictions and standbys and stuff like that, don't you?
I mean, historically, it's just the smallest precinct.
Okay.
And there's very little we can do about it because we have to keep this minority population intact when we look at redistricting, y'all. So it is just the smallest, lowest volume.
So they have a significant less number of standbys and evictions as do the other precincts.
By and large, they are the lowest as far as production.
Let's just check and kind of validate that every once in a
I
while.
mean, the only thing that's really changed about that precinct, and it happened simultaneously with precinct 5 and precinct 6, and that is that the fines were on the uptick due to the opening of Chisholm Trail Parkway.
Okay.
So if you look at JP fines, that has increased, but it does have some but a limited impact on the cost.
On the criminal courts revenue stream, you are correct on County Criminal Court number 5. Judge Family Violence is low because that's the court that's involved with that. And Judge Sorrells is always higher because he represents all the traffic court appeals that come in from all and so that his are higher. The courts implemented this last fiscal year a collections improvement docket under the direction of the Office of Court Administration about implement some policies in order to address the revenue stream. However, it's important the court realizes that statutorily now, coming September 1, which we also do in the improvement docket, is to give people non-monetary ways to pay their fines and court costs. So we partner with the sheriff and volunteer now in order to people can pay off their court fines through community service or working at a labor detail. So that
Does that
represents,
include whatever amount we send to the state?
yes. Yes, it
Courts,
does.
all court costs.
All court costs.
Okay.
But- So
Let's
that's,
whittle off at their level, and if they end up paying any cash, let's make sure that's ours.
yeah, and yes, we'll do that, sir, but I also really compliment the county clerk's office. It was most of these, as misdemeanors, you know, we worked together to come up with the docket, a lot of partnership, and the county clerk does a fantastic job of calling and collecting, and so by the time they get to the docket, they are these are the people that are just, we really just need their case to go away, and they find other ways to deal with it than through collection. But we have a mechanism in place to get as much out of and ensure that people pay their restitution, whether it's through community service or through extending payment plans.
Judge, we're still collecting at about 90% rate in JCO. The money we are able to collect, our team is still able to bring about 90% in collections.
I also noticed that the deed of trust fees are down about 300,000. It says they're up, but they're actually, you're free. Go ahead and come on forward, Mary Louise. In the estimate of that, I mean, you're projected this year to collect 4.2. Our estimate for 18 is 4 million. And while that's still 300,000 above our budget, you were 500,000 above, so should that number be higher?
That's a good question.
I don't honestly think so, I'm sorry. The things that I've cited already, a small softening of the real estate market that I've had several people mention to me, along with some of the uncertainties that I've already mentioned. The economy has been very strong, but the continued strength of the economy and the continued strength of the housing market, at the time when we worked with the clerk's office, we both felt comfortable with that number.
So when it does exceed it, it'll be a big surprise for you.
I mean, we can certainly sit back down and see if we can come up with any justification, but today I don't have that.
Okay. Tom, I see about your district clerk fees.
Yes, I would be remiss if I did not mention the fact that in addition to unfunded mandates from the legislature, we've also had an impact by the Supreme Court rules. And we've had a couple of fairly significant impacts to revenue there. My ability to collect and contest indigent filings is virtually gone. I have to have a smoking gun. They have raised the bar to the point that the district attorney does not wish to represent me in those, and I can understand. It's ridiculous. We only contested 44% of the indigent filings. That was the last figures I did before we shut down the operation due to the recent change in the Supreme Court rules. Of those, we won 82%. There is a significant, I call it a cottage industry out there, of people that are trying to game the system and not pay court costs. However, the Supreme Court has decided to raise the bar to the point where it is very difficult for a clerk to meet that legal standard. In addition, you know about our legislation that did not pass. We anticipated some impact from the Supreme Court's desire to centralize things in Austin and divert revenue to the OCA. We also have no more revenue from e-filing. We lost that last September 1st. It was only good for the hardware, excuse me, whereas the entire e-filing fee that's on the books now of $30 on each case, that goes to the Office of Court Administration, not to the county, not to the state. So unfortunately, if the judges don't levy then I can't collect either. You have that, which you've already talked with Mr. Sugart about that. We don't know how that's going to work out. There's a substantial push coming out of the Supreme Court and the OCA to lower those financial obligations of criminal defendants, and I'm sure you all know about that. So that's all I would like to put on the record, and I'll answer, excuse me, the sinuses are getting me today.
Oh, that helps, that helps.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Did you have something? Randy? No, sir. And then the last thing, you've pretty well, I think you responded to this morning with the additional, on the interest income, it looks like we're at about 1.3, almost 1.4 for this year, and had brought that down to $1 million, but you're now saying it'll be about 1.25, and I would think with the Fed's tendency to be increasing interest rates, we should be, I think the 1.25 or 1.25 makes a little bit more sense from that standpoint, so that's it. That's all I got.
Okay. So then the last slide that I have is to talk about the changes in cash carry forward. And a few things to note here is we're actually this year projecting that we're going to be short in our collection of taxes by about $400,000, and that's associated with the over 65 again. Certainly we have other overages. I mean, it's a game of one line item's less and another line item hopefully makes up for the amount that we're less. But we did miss that. The county has spent more in a couple of areas, not to say that any one area is responsible because it isn't. But we have the JPS that we spent close to the $600,000 for. In IT, their contracts and purchases have exceeded prior years by about $900,000. There's been more transfers of capital funds for purchases of capital equipment. And the road and bridge trend continues to have expenses that exceed income within those funds for the transfer to increase. And then we have the impact of the TIFs this year, the negative increase or the increase in the TIF payments. So with all that said, we're still certainly, this is a number we always work on refining all the way up to the end of through the end of obviously September to get to the actual, but we will continue to look at this. But as you can see there on the schedule, you do have decreases in all of your in your operating, and then the debt service is not. But the road and bridge and the general fund, we project a decrease in the available amount of cash carry forward.
Any questions? Now, I guess the cash carry forward also is affected by the fact, the cash carry forward that we'll have going forward this year is affected by the purchase of the Chase property.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was about, what, it was 6.2?
6.2.
Okay. Okay.
Just a follow-up to your Chase question. That impacted the cash that's in our non-debt capital fund, which isn't taken into consideration here right now. And we were able to accommodate that purchase without planning for it ahead. But what it has done is it's severely limited any strategic changes that we can make to capital next year because we have very little undesignated in there now. So, that being said, I can tell you last-minute changes really mess with your mind. So it's just been hard to wrap our hands around everything as there's just moving pieces that keep happening. And we didn't get on the TIF information. We got the biggest TIFs on Wednesday, which were the city of Fort Worth. So the smaller ones were trickling in the beginning, and the large ones hit us on Wednesday. And we got our last one on Thursday about 2 o'clock.
Now, we had, as I recall it through something that I read, we had three out in the Northeast that dropped off this year. South Lake, Grapevine Mills, and maybe Euless.
Grapevine Mills closed.
And so did South Lake,
I'm sorry, you got me all my information right there. Can't get to it. But I'll look at it when I sit down.
Okay.
in front of you, this is the standard slides that you see every year. So if you're following in your budget, trying to correlate what's what on this slide, any department that begins with a 1, department number wise is general administration, a 2 is public safety, 3 buildings, 4 judicial, 5 is community services, department starts with a 6 is transportation, and then if you're looking at your book at non-departmental, which is traditionally up in general administration, we've tried to dissect it a bit more for you because we put a lot of things there and it's a holding pattern until we get to the point of finally approving the budget, such as there's over $8 million in there for our merit increases. Step increases are actually in all of the law enforcement budgets right now because we use that as part of our salary calculation for them. Interfund transfers are also in non-departmental, as well as undesignated reserves. So that's just a brief overview of the changes within those departments. Now, to be fair with the departments, we made a strategic increase in our retirement rate in January. We'd actually budgeted 17.5 in the department's budgets, and then we increased it January 1st with a holding number in non-departmental. That has not been spread to any of the departments yet, so it's still there. So as you look at some of those increases in the departments or the categories, that will in the end offset some of that. Specifically, as we look, because cash is down, capital itself is down. Road and bridge transfer is up, just like Ms. Tidwell said, because our cash balance has declined. There are 19 new positions in the budget. 2 of those are in road bridge, the rest are in the general fund. We've increased group insurance to reflect the consultant's recommendation and foresight in medical costs increasing about 6.4% next year. Retirement overall has an increase. If you take that $2 million that's in the holding pattern right now and subtract it from that number, it's actually $767,000 increase, and that again is because it changed in January. Retiree group insurance is also up for the same reason as just our health insurance. Overtime salaries. Facilities budgets have operated relatively unchanged over the years, so we had a slight hiccup in electricity finally. Right-of-way requests are down just a tad. Application service provider, that's actually an account that's in the IT budget, and that reflects our outsourcing of the mainframe operations. Professional services overall are down. Again, that's because we have concluded our efforts toward the strategic planning of the JPS project. Principal interest is down just a tad, and if you caught in the budget letter, we are planning a refunding of some older debt next Tuesday. Yeah, a week from Tuesday. So Hilltop, i.e. First Southwest, and Kelly Hart will be here next week to complete that. It has an immediate impact for next fiscal year of $418,000. Undesignated is up slightly. That's because we start each fiscal year with $5 million, so we've used some of that during the year. Texas Department of Regulatory Services, which is CPS. When we're working on the budget, that's the number that had been provided to us by them, but they have since sent us a decrease along, so we'll talk about that when we get to them. Prisoner food is up. Oh, I'm sorry.
Back on that one again. Are they proposing to cut the number of social workers that they provide in this area?
Being the state?
Yes.
Oh, that's a question I don't have an answer for, Catherine.
They are not?
No.
Okay, because I had heard that they were actually decreasing and having to lay folks off, but you're not hearing that here.
No, that hasn't been announced to us at this point.
Some good news. I had not heard that. Software contracts, that's also related to the outsourcing of the mainframe. It's now moved up to application service providers. Council fees, capital murder.
Does that software maintenance, does that reflect the two items that you mentioned in, we got to important read this first?
That's in capital.
That's okay.
That's in capital and IT. Council fees, especially capital murder, is just an ever-changing number that we chase a lot. If we ever have more than one capital murder trial actually go to trial, then we will be dipping into reserves for that. Ooh. It's a lot bigger on my piece of paper. Well, maybe it's not.
Not much.
No, it's not.
Not.
You just get closer to it.
Glasses. As I noted, there are 19 overall positions that are included in the general fund and the road and bridge fund. We have categorized those for you. In this situation, we're looking at 7 of them being related to unfunded mandates. Various workload, 5. Building expansion being 1. And then other, funded by other reductions. As you know, there are some elimination of positions that are in the IT department that are also related to the reduction of the the outsourcing of the mainframe operation. So we have taken the IT positions and shown them as being offset by other reductions. Overall, there was 51 new positions that were requested, and I think 1.6 million is what was included in the budget. As we look at our use of reserves, of course, as far as our cash goes in the general fund, and I'm emphasizing general fund, we are very careful not to wrap our cash back into our operating expense, so we use it solely for capital after taking out, knowing that a good portion of that is related to our reserves. You can see that there is a portion of capital that is funded out of our operating funds. We talked extensively last week about our employee compensation, and as is your goal, we always take into consideration the cost of employee increases first when recommending a budget. You can see there are the various elements of the merit and structure pool. The total is about $10.5 million. This is where the tax rate information stands right now. As we go through today, there's various sundry adjustments that will be taken into consideration that will affect the distribution of the tax rate, could affect the distribution of the tax rate. And again, unfortunately, we weren't able to complete the calculation for the effective tax rate until sometime on Thursday when we got the final pieces of information on TIFs.
Does this reflect the anticipated refunding on Tuesday?
That's taken into consideration in the revenues, which was that flurry of last-minute adjustments that we put in the email to you. Doesn't impact the distribution of the tax rate. Overall adjustments to departments were about $7.6 million. And just to put things in perspective, about $2.5 million of that were new positions that weren't recommended. Unfortunately, this number has changed. The proposed budget on Wednesday was $602 million. That's gone down about $1.1 million as we've had those changes in revenues and some adjustments to the budgets. Total capital requested was $46 million, of which at this point we're recommending $33.8. Next phase. August 22nd, we'll have our first public hearing on the tax rate. September 5th will be the second one. September 12th, we will adopt the tax rate, approve the budget, and approve the compensation expenses of certain elected officials. Questions?
This that came out right here.
Yes, sir. I don't have that in front of me, so okay.
Okay, but what I guess happened, I mean, when all the stuff with the TIFs came out at the last part of the week with Tad telling or giving Ron a new refund number of
Correct.
that, we were basically, y'all scurried around and found an additional $1.3 million worth of,
1.1.
excuse me, 1.135 worth of cuts so that we could still get our penny of property tax down.
Correct.
And that was made up of, I guess, we were looking at right-of-way, and maybe GK or one of y'all think
Well,
talk about this?
The recommendation there is to use approximately there is approximately $700,000 worth of interest earnings in the bond transportation fund. That's as of today. And our recommendation at this point is to use $550,000 of that toward the funding of right-of-way projects.
Okay, and then the other two numbers that you're talking about is to reduce, for the time being, tech shares payment. I think we had a refund, or we think we've got a refund coming on.
So that'll, in the
towards
end,
implementation.
right. In the end, that will remain whole once we move everything into the capital projects fund.
And then the other thing is to reduce the jail management system by $315 right now.
Correct.
We've already got 4.6 allocated toward that. And we feel like that we'll have some opportunity there to.
We'll know more. As we said, we expect that project to move rather quickly. So we'll either know how much will be required in FY18 and how much will be required in 19. If we know we're going to require that much cash go out the door in 1 year, then we'll have time to react.
I do believe, though, that at 4.6, that's going to be a number that we would not exceed this year. Also, I might like to point out that, and it's something we were going to talk to court about tomorrow, but some good news about TechShare and the court Phase 1. We've now completed the implementation of Phase 1, and we are $47,000 less than we had budgeted, and that does not include the contingency. We didn't use any of the contingency, which was about $230,000. So what you're seeing is that there is a $270,000 worth of unspent money because we brought that project in below budget.
That's good.
We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow.
Now, Debbie, we are funding about $7.2 million worth of capital from operating fund.
Correct.
How do you determine which to fund from capital, which is to fund from operating?
Well, it's really still all classified as capital. And I know we do things a little oddly, but we try to keep that capital number that departments are requesting in front of you as we're going through these budget hearings. But there's a like number as an operating transfer for capital and non-departmental. So it's that number, and it's that information that's part of the operating transfer that gets moved over to the capital projects fund. So what we're measuring here is after we take our cash and after we take out our reserves, being undesignated and reserves, and how much of that total cash number are we using for capital. And you see there is a difference, which means it's coming from our operating resources.
But we're actually budgeting $33 million.
Right.
Almost $34 million worth of
26 of it's from cash, and the balance is from our operating resources, which is tax rate, it's all of our fees of office, cash, combination of everything.
And Debbie, that is a one-time expenditure, right?
Well, yes, we say that. The day we don't have any isn't, huh?
Until next year when it might not be a one-time.
And you know, there is a fear amongst those of us that sit around up here in the middle of the night worrying about these things that cash is on a downward trend. So if that's true, then what we have available for capital will continue to decrease if that's the case.
And at
And
the same time, we're in capital, we're getting to a point where that we may not be spending the same amount next year on a particular project as we do this year.
And that's an important note, because this year there is phase 2 of an allocation of $7 million that is anticipated to be used for the replacement of our election equipment. Again, once we get into this, well, until we get to the point of approving the budget, that's a project that needs to move pretty fast because of the timing of getting that equipment in here and certain elections that you want to have it used on for testing purposes.
And that's, what, 7 million, did you say this year?
7 million this year with
7
coupled
million.
with 7 from 17, which is this year, 17.
So, I mean, that is a good point. Remember that we basically, over the last 2 years, have accumulated 14 million for equipment, and it had been 10 or more years since, I mean, I guess we bought that, well, the federal government bought that.
Federal government bought it, that's
in about
correct.
2002 or 2003.
it's voting machines. And
So our hope would be after
Which
this
are no
7,
longer supported,
the technology
which
is
are no
no,
longer supported by the
Right.
manufacturer.
so hopefully this will be the last of that 7 million.
For most of us.
Yeah.
I also noticed there's about $600,000 or so, give and take, worth of recurring salary cost as a result of the unfunded mandate. In our accounting system, is there a way that you can keep track of the accumulated cost due to state regulations and so forth?
There is not,
There's not a way to do
but
that?
as Judge Whitley and I have this conversation all the time, I often say everything we do is an unfunded mandate, because we only do what the state of Texas tells us to do.
That's partly true.
Okay, primarily.
I'm pretty aggressive about identifying things as unfunded mandates. I am nowhere near as aggressive as she is. Because we have, we've talked a little bit, we have departments.
You
we have-
could take all of our administrative departments, which we wouldn't function without.
But I do believe that, we've probably got at least 2, 3, maybe 4 pennies on our tax rate. When you look at, and again, some of these would be arguable, but I would be willing to stand behind and argue. The Michael Morton cost us a lot. We've got the Sandra Bland that's coming up this year.
Correct.
We have, in my opinion, any fees we pay for criminal attorneys in the DA's office is an unfunded mandate, because there's probably over 200, Greg, I really wish you'd get this number for me, but I really believe that there are probably over 200 counties that the one DA that is elected and paid for by the state is enough to handle all of the state's prosecution in those particular counties. Sharon can do a lot, but she can't do as much as her other 139 or 37 attorneys that we get to pay for. And so I consider that to be an unfunded mandate, along with all the prisoners that we keep in the jail, both waiting for them to be taken to prison, as well as those that are brought back here and reside in our jail for some period of time.
Yeah, those blue warrants are expensive.
Those blue warrants right there is exactly what we're talking about there. And then we've got the indigent defense that cost us at least 15 million, so that's a penny, almost a penny right there.
And my point is, excuse me, sir. My point is, I understand that we are the creature of the state. I understand that in many cases. But we got to be able to measure the additional cost as a result of regulation. Because there is a cost to additional regulation and legislation and so forth. So if there's a way that we can say the incremental cost to county operation is increasing by X amount of dollars as a result of state legislation, then I think that's a good way to manage our operational overhead as well.
understand totally where you're going from. And yes, we wish it were easy to do that, but it's just, we stood up here the other day and talked about the Michael Morton Act and what impact it's also having on defense attorneys, counsel fees that we're paying. Because not only are we having to review all that evidence in advance, so are those defense attorneys, primarily of which we're paying for.
You know, by the way, they're sitting in jail an extra day or two.
Right.
While everybody's reviewing everything.
And, you know, you mentioned Sandra Bland. I did want to point out that there is an increase related to the services provided by MHMR in the jail related to responding to some of that. There's also about $146,000 additional funding for MHMR to the special needs officers who are out there training other police departments to recognize and deal with certain aspects of the community without bringing them into jail. So overall, there's probably about $300,000 worth of increases related to mental health issues.
I'd just like to point out that although there are costs to all of these things, there are also community benefits attached as well. So just because we pay additional costs doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
No.
And hopefully it does save money in some of those instances later on down the line.
Right. I understand where Commissioner Brooks is coming from, but when you look at an increase of county's expenditure from one year to the next, we got to be able to attribute where the increase come from. It could be inefficient use of taxpayers' dollars. It could be regulation from the state. And we got to be able to pinpoint where those increases come from so we can manage the county's budget more effectively.
Debbie, thank you very much for all the work you and everybody has done.
Did you get any sleep last night?
Last night, yes.
Yeah, it was last week.
Wednesday night, Thursday night, no.
Are we ready?
Lead the way.
Okay, let's get our
Are we
screens
ready, or do
changed.
you need any kind of a stopping point before we go? Let's go.
I push the button. Gary? No, not yet.
Hang on just a second.
Technical problem. Gary. Oh, I'm red.
All right, first one up is the Sheriff's Department.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning,
Sheriff.
good morning.
Good morning.
And Commissioner, once again, happy birthday, and with full disclosure, we celebrated a birthday a week or so ago in my house, and with the national news being what it was, and transparency being about, at that birthday party, I both had dinner and colluded with both the Chinese and the Russians. And however, the average age was about 7. So, but thank you for being here. This is my first rodeo. I'm honored to be with you to be deciding the future and the policies of this county, which I consider the best county in the state. And it has been well run, and I know that we'll continue to do that. And Renee, with one of the subjects that she brought up, is that she says that we're going to lose revenue if the baby boomers continue to age. I would like to represent them and say we pray they do. But
Indeed.
Indeed. With that all said, and you were talking about unfunded mandates, and I want to talk about a couple of those also, is that I know that we are sitting with everything that we're going on. We're sitting in one of the fastest growing urban counties in the United States. And, we've shattered all records that COG has represented over the last 10 or 15 years, and I feel like we'll pass Dallas probably in the next 10 years. And North Texas will have over 9 million people, they estimate, in another short 13 years. That's a lot of folks on highways and crossing bridges and creating public safety havoc. And I know that we have a lot of work to do to maintain our way of life and to guard against the things that we put in place. You know, when I took office, I want to just say this, and my vision was very simple. I wanted to obey the law, strive for excellence, become the best sheriff's office in the land, institute high standards, implement servant leadership, empower and protect our team. In doing so, hopefully raise the standards and the morale to create a professional environment with great service to our citizens. And further create an expectation of reducing our recidivism rate by creating warm handoffs to nonprofits and non-governmental entities that doesn't cost us any money, and also place incentives inside the jail for educational programs and so forth. And we've invested a lot in those things and invested a lot in those times in the last 8 months. We have a long way to go, but we have reduced our turnover rate. When we came into office in January, our jail overturn rate was up close to 100 positions, and I'm happy to report this, we're about down to 9. And it's an incredible relief factor that we needed to get into place. And hopefully we've also created some superstars in our ranks, and they're reaching for the stars. And we have a community of SO people who are becoming professionals that will be recognized, no doubt, in the state and in the country as we go forth, because we have some true superstars there. Also, you know, we have created a cooperation with major crime going up and our jail population going up. We have reached out to our neighbors and our other community leaders to resolve major law enforcement issues, and we continue to do so, and we plan to do that. We asked for several capital issues in this budget, and we asked for several operational needs. And we did. In doing so, we guarded against what is referred to as supplanting as going to that cash cow of forfeiture and commissary. And we must continue to do that. In doing so, some of the unfunded mandates that we're meeting with our forfeiture funds or our commissary are, for instance, we're investing $20,000 in video interview rooms that we are required to have when we're interviewing certain suspects. And we're also installing an auto pipe system in our jail system with commissary funds to make it safer for both our inmates and a better record of our jailers checking on those inmates. And we just recently bought a $80,000 laundry truck. We're going out and trying to get, and these are all out of commissary and forfeiture funds, we are also doing a new electronic fingerprint system that'll get us data quicker and faster and also record it better. We're also dealing with education issues, along with less lethal options and furniture. We have one of our substations, I believe, has the furniture off the Barney Miller set, and we hope to replace that pretty soon. And we also saw a tremendous need for our officers, and we're using forfeiture funds to do some of this. My first on-scene issue was a guy with an AK-47, and he had fired some shots, and our first-on officers were at 200 yards with a shotgun. Now, those that know about rifles and shotgun, that's what we call outgunned. And we are working hard and diligently to do that. And we understand that the ambush of law enforcement officers, regardless of where they're at, is at an all-time high in what it is. And last night we lost another officer in Missouri that was shot and killed on a traffic stop. We've also intentionally created different standards in our internal affairs division and also in our investigation, pushing some things out into the field and also a better way of disciplining people. With that, we were able to reallocate and create a human trafficking intelligence unit, and a unit that is just getting really up off the ground, but it's already had an impact on saving lives, and we expect higher dividends in the future. But we've actually gotten children out of human trafficking along with adults. We are set to become PREA compliant. Actually, when I came in, I thought we were, but we were not. And PREA compliant creates a safer environment for both our inmates and our jailers, and it goes along with the Sandra Bland issue also. Those things are kind of in sync in a lot of different ways. And but PREA and compliant is also necessary for some grants that we apply for. But again, we plan on doing a lot of that out of our commissary fund. We have increased our chaplain staff. We've created high visibility downtown to create, hopefully, or bring about employee and our citizens more safe as they do business here. We've created rack time in the jail and limited visitation so that defense attorneys could simply get to their clients and hopefully do our part moving the docket along, because over 50% of our jail is going to be with unsentenced felons. While we have used a great deal of forfeiture and commissary fund, of course, these are not endless coffers, and we got to guard against supplanting. And currently, we're going through a process in the first time in history of the Sheriff's Department and Tarrant County where instead of in Cloak and Dagger or wherever at the closed room that commissary fund is awarded, we decided to be very transparent, use our own budgeting office, our purchasing office and Renee's office to make sure it's clear and transparent on where we're going with the new commissary contract, which I think will have a direct impact on our efficiency. But we do need help in some areas. And one of those areas is simply a policy statement that I want to make sure, I think that we're all on accord with. And it's a policy statement, not monies here, but I don't think. And one of those areas are our narcotic task force. Today, the opiate epidemic is alive and well in Tarrant County. And just realizing that fatal overdoses in Tarrant County are up by 34%, and the introduction to fentanyl has played a large part in this deadly impact on our community. And Tarrant County, unfortunately, is no longer out of that fight. We are in it. We know in Tarrant County is both the crossroads for the Mexican cartel and narco trade and human trade. And we also know that this is a never-ending battle, but never before in the history of my 37 years in law enforcement has this battle been so important and so complicated. And we must maintain this task force with our municipal partners to ensure we're on the same page, and with our federal partners. In recent months, we've taken down large counterfeit pill manufacturing groups, and we have taken down large quantities of drugs, both through our patrol efforts and task force efforts. We believe, as do all of our partners, the Mexican cartel and the Chinese mob are alive and well in North Texas, and including here. With all that said, I appreciate your continuing support of the Narcotic Task Force. And I think in demonstrating transparency with clear continuing support of this fight is that it would be great to have its own cost center so the public could see what we're doing. And with that said, one of the things that happens with the MOU is that the Sheriff's Office receives 20% of all seizures from the narcotic funds, narcotic task force rather, to do with sheriff priorities. Well, you have my pledge that 20% is going to go directly back toward that task force and not over on the sheriff's side of the ledger to ensure that we do that we continue to do that. But we want to send a clear message with our budget policy that task force is viable and supported by Tarrant County. And that's one of the things I ask you to consider. With that said, I can move on to other items here. You know, my first meeting right here in Tarrant County was in December, and it was an exciting meeting. But in visiting with commissioners, and one of the most asked questions I had was, "What are you going to do about the homeless situation downtown?" And of course, I was well aware of the assaults and the mistrials, including the assaults in our own correction center, the stalking issues, the theft, and the criminal mischief, and many people just living along our county corridor causing issues. And we took that up within the first few days. And by week's end, the first week that we ended in January, with great compassion and without any arrest, we cleared that corridor. And bringing safety, we believe we brought safety and peacefulness back to this environment where the people can conduct their business in peace and tranquility. And we are still out there making sure that occurs. This was done by stretching our resources, and we put off other missions, but in the meantime, we had partnered with Fort Worth, Inc., we had partnered with Bass Security, we had partnered with Fort Worth PD, and we had clear communications and assistance from all those entities to ensure this corridor is safe. However, under the current recommended budget, there's a cascade effect. We too have an unfunded mandate. We had a probate judge that left the bench, and a new judge and a new associate that came in. Well, previously that associate judge did not want a bailiff. Well, now they do. Well, we've stretched things and mandated by law we must furnish that bailiff. And currently in the judicial division there hasn't been, in fact throughout the judicial and jail system, there hasn't been adequate relief systems. And that cascade effect, we have used the judicial system for our downtown patrol, is that we will not have the people to continue that effort. And we think that it is an important effort that is going to be left to us. It is not going to be left to other entities to do this. And but we've stretched it. We've backed up benefits in our judicial system where we have a lot of senior people. And this has also affected retention because they just can't get time off. And we worked hard this summer to try to make sure that they do. But currently we have 2 judicial folks on that patrol corridor, which we intend to keep unless we have to replace bailiffs. And we've also used in the evening shift warrants, investigation, and internal affairs. It's been a total SO effort to make sure this corridor has been safe. And what we need today is that we've got the 2 judicial guys that we hope to keep unless we have to put them in a bailiff spot. And we also, what we asked for in the original budget was 2 other additions to relieve our warrants and our investigators and our other folks to get back to work where they need to be, and of course, the bailiff for that court. And the cost, and I'm running these things down, these costs for your consideration is for that portion of it is $237,324. And that is a lot of money, and I recognize that. But I think it's critical to our mission here and critical to the safety of the folks downtown. There is a additional business that at hand also. One of the areas that have been a tremendous unfunded mandate, and I don't think the state's going to help us out not one bit this year, and that's with our mental health issues. And we are teetering on 3,900 people in our jail, and as a general rule, we can identify quickly 25% of those that are mental health issues. And with the Sandra Bland issue, as you spoke of, is that we have already mitigated most of that by the course of our training programs that meet that Sandra Bland. There's some capital expenditures of cameras and so forth that we will have to see if we need in Belknap and a couple of other places. But we also have mental health officers that have to do transfers, and currently we have 4 officers assigned to do mental health transfers. And the law mandates that they must be in plain clothes and a plain car. They want to make them as invisible as possible to obviously protect some of these people's issues. And just for instance, in 2015, we did 873 of those type of transports. In 2016, it went to 1,496, and this year we're going to beat that. And with our JPS partners who are very, very actively supportive of this, is that we have asked for a mental health officer in addition to the 4 that we have. And of course, that comes with a cost package of an unmarked car and some things, and that totals up to $134,000 and some change. And we appreciate any consideration on that.
Can any of that be done in the jail? Isn't a lot of that being done in the jail?
A lot of that's been done in the jail, but the guy I'm talking about is actually transporting these people either to JPS or other mental facilities to get assistance. And they're in custody they're in custody.
So they've already had the workup done at the jail, but they're as a result of that workup, they're required to go other places.
Go other places, and this is also the same guys that serve the mental health warrants. They also go out and get them and transport them in, and they are under that same obligation.
Okay.
Under that same obligation. But right now, we have still the lowest incarceration in the state of about 1.68, but we are teetering on about 3,900 people in our jail, pushing us close to 80% capacity, and we're watching those numbers and we're trying to figure out the best economic and efficient way to handle all those things. And of course, I think Debbie had already mentioned that is driving up food costs. They unlike my children, they expect food with their meals, and so we'll continue to do that and meet those requirements. We've got one other issue that. As I look at across the state, and I applaud you for the low taxes, and I'm very supportive of the $25,000 or whatever it is that we come up with of homestead exemptions, because I believe that to be a real tax cut, and I'll certainly support that any way I can. But I have found that the jail in particular, if you compare us with other urban county jails, we have a lot lower staff group than they do. The total staff down in Bexar County is around 1,800 people. We have somewhere under 1,500 people. But what we don't have is that we don't have a relief factor for our supervisors, and supervisors are incredibly important in this. There are many shifts a week that we have a sergeant that's running the jail of 1,200 people. And we moved, what we've done again is we've stretched and we looked at operations, and we took our lieutenants out of operations and moved them over to the jail because they need to be versatile to do that, and we've done that. And we've moved them in there to fix some of that issue and gain some of that. And what we've done is that we believe that coaching occurs with more and better supervision and inmate safety and officer safety. In fact, we've spent overtime this year bringing about what I refer to as a safe jail. We have gone above the minimum standards. We've reached a little bit better for that, and that's better for the inmate, that's better for the officer. In fact, in the first quarter of 2016, there were 30 assaults on our officers in the first quarter. And under our system in 2015, we reduced that to 15. And now that's significant to the 15 that wasn't assaulted and not so significant to the 15 that were. But we're still working on that and giving them the tools and the equipment that they need to have so that they do that. And we're investing highly in mitigating issues and crises and so forth like that we can push back on that. But what we're looking for in this, as we've done all that, is we still have a relief factor with lieutenants. And we had asked for a total of 4 lieutenants in this budget, which is a big number. It's $409,000 addition. But my thought is, and I know you've got a lot of priorities out there, even if we could have 2 of those, it would have a significant impact, which would reduce that to about $204,000. But what I've asked for this morning is consideration. If we did the 4 lieutenants, $781,000. That's a lot of money. And if we just do 2 of them, it's $576,000. And again, with all of that said, I know we live in the best county in Texas, and we are the beacon of hope for the rest of the state. And the way we set our standards, I believe the others would go. And but I appreciate your time this morning, and I don't envy your position because I know there's a whole list of people behind me that have similar issues. And I want to assure you the Sheriff Office respects what your decisions are and where they're at. And with that, I appreciate the auditor's work on this and GK and his team getting us to this point. And I am at your disposal for any questions or concerns.
Any questions?
I just have a comment, and it is that, Sheriff, I appreciate your sensitivity to and your desire to want to serve the mentally ill in our jail in a better way.
Thank you.
Similarly, I appreciate your attitude towards reentry and recidivism. I note that there is a reentry officer included in your budget. That is a huge step forward for both the SO and for Tarrant County.
Absolutely.
There are some best practices that are beginning to be recognized nationally in terms of diverting mentally ill persons from the county jail in the first place. These have been proven to save dollars, big dollars.
Yes, sir.
In the long run, and there are many in this community who are beginning to work on those types of solutions. But I appreciate you for doing the best you can with what you've got.
Thank you very much. And I do think that that recidivism rate means tax dollars too.
Absolutely.
And not only is it the moral thing, it's the best thing overall. And we got to work on that end a little bit harder.
I've always said that if you can take someone who's made a mistake and give them a chance to turn their lives around and become tax-paying, family-supporting citizens once again, it's a plus for everybody involved in that equation.
Amen. We are on the same page, sir, I assure you.
Questions or other questions?
So Sheriff, let me, I have a short attention span, so sorry.
Me too. That's okay.
Your request include an additional warrant manual deputy, right?
Yes, sir.
One, and the estimated cost, recurring cost for that is $134,800, am I right?
It's not all recurring. Probably closer to 75 would be recurring because the package is that would be his radio, his car, and all those things that you have to get up front.
And then the other one, the court security?
Yes, sir.
You're asking for 2 additional?
2 additional for patrol purposes and 1 addition for the bailiff, the probate courts.
Okay. For the downtown patrol and for the probate court?
Yes, sir.
right? Probate, okay. And then the confinement, you need detention lieutenant.
Yes,
You're
sir.
asking for 4?
We asked for 4 and hoping for at least 2, and that'll make a significant impact.
Are they not being able to take their vacation and stuff as it is right now?
We are having a difficult time doing all that. What we're doing is seeing the backup of people not getting to take vacation. So we've got employees down there with 1,000 hours, 1,200 hours of vacation, both in judicial and in the jail, because we haven't had the great relief factors there. And we've figured out ways to get people off since we've been in office. We've used overtime and we've used some other things to make sure some of that has happened, because there's been some critical events that have happened, and obviously.
And I guess I want to make sure that, because I know a lot of employees accumulate their hours in an effort to have those hours in case they were to become sick. So what you're saying is if they were to get those, then those hours are going to go down because you're not able to let them off right now.
That is correct, and we intend to do that. We intend to get those benefit hours down one way or the other so that liability is not out there.
And there are significant morale and public safety issues associated with that.
And I don't disagree with that, but again, you and I and several of us have employees who have significant hours, but
Right,
they choose
right.
to have that
Right.
in an effort to be prepared in case something were to come along and they need those hours.
Well, I believe that our disability insurance kicks in after 500.
6 months. They've been on payroll for 6 months.
They'd have to have 1,000 hours in order to be able to cover that 6-month period.
Yeah. And my issues are more in judicial. We're working it out in the jail. The lieutenants is actually having that person that has that experience, that authority, and that training that's in command of a jail when you're dealing with about 1,200 folks, so that we don't take a sergeant away, just trying to close the loop and not miss things.
The bailiff for the probate judge, does the other probate courts associate have a bailiff? No. So this is something new that,
They just simply operate different.
Say again?
The 2 courts operate differently.
well,
They
but
do.
did Virgil have a bailiff for the associate?
No.
Didn't want
The
one.
shared, it's not always possible because they run into conflict with each other. When I say share, being the court and the associate judge court. They share as much as possible, they share as much as possible. But again, depending on how they schedule those 2 courts independent of each other, depends on how often that assigned bailiff is available for the other court.
And I guess one of my druthers on that particular one is that I believe Judge King has announced that he is retiring.
Correct.
And so we're going to have 2 probate judges with the hope that they might communicate.
We can hope.
We can hope.
And so that there's a possibility that maybe that bailiff wouldn't, I guess that would be my druthers for waiting and seeing about that as opposed to, because I guarantee you, once we hire them, we'll never lose them.
We already have 1 bailiff in
In
probate
Both
1.
courts.
in Judge Brooks's office.
One assigned to each court.
1 assigned to each court.
Yeah.
So you're asking for an additional 1.
For an additional one.
For the probate
associate-
one.
Our
So
newest
make it 2
associate
total.
asked for the bailiff.
Probate 2.
Probate 2,
2.
yes.
And we're doing that. We're working where we have those people in there.
So 1 bailiff for the judge and 1 bailiff for the associate judge. Is that,
Do the other
So they're hearing 2 cases at the same time?
Oftentimes, yes. Yes.
And a lot of
Different
time,
locations, that's correct.
And and the one bad part about that is I think they're completely different ends of the old courthouse.
Although they're completely different floors.
And you want to come?
They are, the hearing
words on mental health.
You need to come up here.
And the other thing that, these are also the judges that do.
Go ahead and announce who you are and why you're speaking on this now.
Sharon Wilson, I'm the district attorney, criminal district attorney. I have attended the mental health hearings. They're held at JPS in a courtroom there, which is a completely different facility than the court where the court meets at the old courthouse across the street. I mean, they are literally at JPS in a hearing room. And so the magistrate goes to that location, and the bailiffs it's amazing. They pull the people and get them there, and, so it is not just at different ends of the same building, it is completely across town. I just wanted to tell you that.
So you're gonna be in favor of this one, so when you're coming up for yours, you won't necessarily, you'll be willing to give that one to him?
Let me just say, I am so impressed with the decisions and the work that the sheriff has done, and I'm simply standing here telling you that he's absolutely telling you the truth on this issue, as
Thank you.
always.
I have no doubt that you are telling us the truth.
Yeah,
That's not the concern.
No.
The concern is it's the dollars.
It's the dollars. It's always the
Concern
dollars.
is 1 penny on our tax.
Absolutely, and I get that. I absolutely get that.
And just an FYI, until about a week ago, the mental health deputy was in the budget. Unfortunately, there were about 5 positions total that came out as we approached the.
As we found out about other things that were coming up, okay? Can we put these positions that he's talked about over in the to be determined later column and the rest of the budget, well?
Yeah, we
just
need to
started
get
the
them
budget,
and
Right.
You got
dollar
another
amount
thing?
that goes with them. We need to get that and the dollar amount that goes with each one of these positions.
Well, I think if we include the 2 lieutenants.
We don't need that figure now. We need it when we
Let's just put them over in the
make a
to be
decision on
determined.
it. Yeah.
You're looking at about an additional $573,497.
About?
About.
About $575,000, actually.
Yes, sir.
In addition, yes, sir. $500,000.
Now, does that finish your discussion on your budget, or is?
That finishes my discussion. We're taking everything else and we're,
Then I'll take a motion to put those requests over in the to be determined, and they'll approve the rest of the budget.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir.
I'm asking the impossible right now, Sheriff. Can you prioritize these additional requests from 1 to 4?
they're
That
almost
would be
on.
very helpful.
Yeah, I got it. They're almost on the same level, and that's the reason, because
It's all
like
P1.
that one bailiff has the cascade effect of other issues, and but I can try to do that. I'd like an opportunity to do that and ship it back to you.
That would be very helpful for
Yeah.
us. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to put over stress on our folks, but we have prided ourselves in having the fewest employees per capita, and
And we do, and that's
we
great.
do by far, and I know you referred to Bexar County, and we're significantly with a similar population to what they're probably as comparable to us from a population standpoint as anybody else.
They are. They are
And we're
definitely.
significantly below them on a per employee type basis.
Just in the sheriff's office alone, we're less than 300 people, or they have 300 plus more people than we do, and they're dealing with one major municipality, and we've got several major and several small municipalities.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for your
Sheriff.
time.
Constable Precinct 1.
Move approval.
He was here. I saw him a moment ago. Constable.
I'm good with them. I'm good with what we are presenting.
Satisfied.
Move approval.
I have a motion
Second.
And a second?
We're adding a car allowance on this one?
That's correct. There's actually two throughout the budget. Thank you for pointing that out, Commissioner Thompson. There is this one in precinct 1. This particular elected official constable has not had a car assigned to him in about 3 years, so we're recommending the substitute car allowance. The other one is in the district attorney's office.
You don't have to vote.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Precinct 2 is satisfied, has indicated that they're satisfied.
Take one and pass them down.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any
Which one are you
discussion?
on?
Number 2.
Number 3.
Wait a minute,
Yeah.
well, whatever you're handing out, I'm one short. Oh, wait a minute, here it is, I'm sorry.
I was just being proactive.
Thank you.
Do we have a vote?
We have not voted yet. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Constable Precinct 3.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Constable Precinct 4.
Welcome. Good morning.
The only thing I have is, other than what we turned into Debbie earlier, and it's probably an oversight on my fault because I wasn't here when this happened. I've got 2 part-time positions that they cover a 40-hour week, but they had been given previously a raise from $14 to $18 an hour, and I was not aware of that. I was looking at the numbers from last year, and we didn't recommend any changes. But to compensate for that or to cover their raises that they were already given, we're going to ask for an additional $6,149. And I've already spoke with Debbie about that, so that's the exact number.
What happened, how did that, Debbie, how did that happen?
They did increase the hourly rate for their temporary deputies throughout the year. When they did that, there was a conversation that says, keep in mind, the money you have is the money you have. It may mean if you're going to increase the hours, you may get, you're going to increase the rate, you may get fewer hours out of the transaction. So, but that was their option. They did increase the salaries.
So this year, that results in the 6,000 more,
Correct.
and that's,
Jim.
so he just now turned,
Turn the mic on.
works. He's probably been texting you forever. So that's going to result in the salaries being that 6,000 more?
And get approximately the same amount of hours out of the, out of it. Which I think is right at 40 hours a week.
Yeah, we're able to cover 40 hours a week. This is a
Between
raise.
2 deputies.
Ma'am?
Between 2
With 2
deputies.
deputies. But we don't have to give them any compensate as far as additional. They're working part-time, so they're making about $5 less an hour than a full-time person with no
Are these
additional
part-time
benefits.
deputies or part-time clerks?
Part-time deputies.
Deputies, okay.
So is that going to be in your part-time salaries line?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's going to go up by 6,000? How much do you have there, 6,149?
That's what I have. Now, Jody and I did talk about this, but all of a sudden I can't remember if I included FICA or not, but we'll take a look at that later.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second.
To include?
To include, including the 6149.
For the record, show that I'm abstaining from voting on this at the direction of the district attorney's office.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Johnson abstaining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jody.
Constable Precinct 5.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
On for precinct 6.
6 accepts budget as provided.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
On for precinct 7.
Judge, Commissioners, and Commissioner, congratulations on your NACO nomination appointment.
Thank you, sir.
I printed out some stuff for you. You asked a question earlier about some eviction numbers for each precinct. I was just letting you know that that was on there if you needed to see that.
Okay, thank you.
The first page there is a breakdown of all the constables. And the second page that I have there for you, which has the green top, actually refers to, if you look at the bottom area, it has precincts and it's broke down by yearly totals. You can see that. That's taking all the numbers from the page 1 and moving it over so you can see the yearly totals.
Okay.
Basically what I was doing is showing you a breakdown of the number totals of papers that each precinct serves. And then next to it to the right is the monthly average per precinct. What I'm asking for today is really only one concern, is that for the last 12 years I've had 2 clerks. And what I'm trying to ask for is that if we could add another clerk to our office. If you look up into the area that I have a little star on there, orange line, that has a breakdown of the monthly papers to each office. Each office has 2 clerks. It's kind of a cookie cutter symbol. You know, I have it.
I was wondering, you gave me 2
somebody must
exact
have-
same copy.
So if you look at the orange line there as a star, that's the breakdown per month. So we have a cookie cutter plan that we've had for at least 12 years since I've been in office. Of each constable's office has 2 clerks, with the exception of a couple that have some specialty assignments. So we take in just 2 clerks. Now, if you go down below that, the next line that's kind of pink, it breaks down to those 2 clerks of how many papers they're responsible for inputting into the system each month. And if you look at precinct 7, which has got a pink line, it shows you that that person's responsible for 773 papers versus some of the other offices. Now, I don't want to sit and compare one office to another, and I don't think we should. But my point here is that we're serving considerably more per clerk of input than other offices. What I would like to ask is that I understand the restraints that we have right now of adding positions, but I'd like to ask for half of the salary of a new clerk to give it a part-time person that could fill in. For example, tomorrow we have 1 clerk out on vacation, other one's going to a funeral. So that puts us in a real bind. I have to bring a deputy in off the street just to actually input papers. So what I would like to ask is if we could possibly have half that money for a salary, for a part-time salary, to fulfill that position. That'll get through us next year. We can reevaluate with some of the percentages we have that we're talking about maybe applying to next year. That may suffice to go to a full-time position next year.
Debbie,
Sure.
talk to us a little bit about your reasoning on that.
Every office operates a little bit differently. I'm not going to dispute that. Now, we did start adding the second clerk back in 2007. So they were added over a number of years to all the offices, regardless of the total number of papers they serve. The whole premise behind that was to eliminate bringing in a deputy out of the field when the 1 clerk was off. So
And the reason 3 has the extra, is that because they do the
that's all.
foreclosures?
Well, 2 things. They're because of the sales on the courthouse steps and because they have 2 offices. They have the South Lake and the Northeast office.
They have to have that.
Right. And they use the clerk that's at South Lake office to work hand in hand with property sales on the courthouse step.
And again, I'm not trying to necessarily compare us to any other office. I'm just saying, I'm just pointing out the numbers themselves so you can actually physically see what the numbers are.
You know, there's a certain amount of data entry, to the best of my knowledge, that's done. Papers are all accumulated over in Precinct 1, which is why they have an additional clerk. All the papers from the county clerk, the district clerk, the sheriff's department, and those that might be mailed in directly to Precinct 1 are gathered over there, a certain amount of data entry is done by them, and the papers are allocated out to the other 6 precincts. So there's some of the data entry that's done there.
Some of it is, but there's still quite a bit that has to be put in, time that it's brought in.
Some of the precincts have their officers do the paper serve data entry once they serve a paper. We've given them MDCs to have in their car so they can do as much of that stuff upon the completion of the transaction. It sounds like in your situation, Clint, and excuse me if I've misinterpreted, you have your papers come back. The deputies bring the papers back, or the clerks enter that information.
No, we're actually the opposite. We're the ones, actually, the deputies are doing it, and the other officers are able to have the
Okay.
clerks do that.
Okay.
So, looking at these numbers, your clerk average monthly workload almost double some of the other offices. So you're asking for half?
I'm asking just if I could be considered for a half part-time position.
Okay.
For half the salary of whatever clerk would cost, that will suffice and get us through this
And how
next year.
much is that half?
On your screen.
34,522 is what a clerk would cost.
Well, you had said in your email that you were asking for $14,000.
I'm sorry. What I was asking for was if I could get 20 hours a week on average, but $15 an hour would be $14,400.
Plus FICA,
Plus what?
Social Security.
We're talking about 15,071.
Correct.
15,071. I think that's a reasonable request, given the average workload. So I move for its approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the 15,071. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Constable.
Constable Precinct 8.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Medical examiner.
I believe they were satisfied. Does include one new position.
Move approval of the budget, of the medical examiner's budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Could we take a 5-minute break?
We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Yes.
What's up, the button? What button? We don't have no stinking button.
Folks, listen well this morning. There is cake out here that Commissioner Johnson says he ain't carrying home. So y'all be going out there and eating it.
Oh, I do.
The next one is the fire marshal's office, and he is satisfied with his budget.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote.
Oh, no.
Motion passes unanimously.
Community supervision. Let's see, community supervision is satisfied with their budget.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Pretrial release is satisfied with their budget.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Juvenile services is satisfied.
No, Benny was standing up back there.
up.
No, we're satisfied with it.
Benny wants to make his own announcement. Move approval, Benny.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
We okay?
We're good.
Okay. 323rd District Court.
They're satisfied.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Public health.
Oh, different
What happened to
tab.
human services?
Well, a different tab. They're next, they're after public health. It's
Public health.
another tab on your,
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Human services, they're satisfied with their budget.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Child protective services,
now, now there is a significant reduction that we'll have here, and I'm sorry, but that piece of paper escapes me. I want to say it's in the neighborhood of 300,000, is that right, Catherine? But it's not the final number either, so we're going to use 300,000 for now.
Say what?
Yeah, say what?
When this budget was developed by,
Yeah, you better come on down.
when this budget was developed by staff, of course, it was very early in the process of the state and the legislative session. And as you know, there was all sorts of conversations and discussions going on for the funding of their department. We fund 40 and a half positions, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We fund 40 and a half positions. So in the beginning, they took a worst-case scenario based on what they knew was happening in discussions in the legislature. Since that time, they've gotten more accurate information from the state, and right now, we're talking about a reduction of somewhere in the neighborhood of 300,000.
Reduction.
Reduction.
So the budget increase that you had in there
Has diminished greatly.
of 467 is now going to be reduced by 300,000.
Correct.
That's much more better.
Much more better.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are you satisfied with your budget?
Yes, we are satisfied.
That number is still subject to change, but we think it'll be marginal.
The participation rate is what they have not approved, and we're still waiting for. Or at this point, they're leaving your participation rate the same, which was one of the reasons that number is so great. If they had originally told me they were going to increase your participation rate this year. So I had projected about a 0.5% increase, which would allot about another 117,000 onto the budget. But the newest information is they're trying to leave that the same. So I'm waiting on that to be authorized to know for sure.
And the money we spend here, in addition to the 40.5 employees that we contract with the state for, which is included in this which I guess will be now 2.3.
Correct.
That covers, besides the 40 contracted social workers, what is the rest of that?
It's an array of indirect cost,
Okay.
a lot of indirect cost.
She's looking at her numbers. Like, why don't you give me a little bit more detail?
About what it
other than
covers?
a lot of indirect costs.
It covers, the most significant is that it helps reimburse our local foster parents for providing clothing for the children in their care.
Okay.
We provide a quarterly allotment to help defray that cost, a reimbursement. It's not, they have
Not
to.
an allotment, it's a
Correct, reimbursement.
Catherine,
That's,
hold on. I want to make sure I understand your question. You're talking about it in the contract with the state.
Oh.
And not
I'm
the
talking
other.
about this Texas Department of Regulated
Okay.
Services.
oh, I'm sorry.
So that's-
I apologize. I thought you meant the entire budget
No,
amount.
it's-
Okay.
I knew you were off focus.
Thank you. No, the part with the state is covering the fringe benefits. The salary itself is the largest, and then, of course, the fringe benefits are about 35%. And then there's a whole allotment, like she said, of indirect costs from the computer fees, the cell phone fees, a whole bunch of overhead costs that they project per staff person. And those are all the numbers that we just wait every year for them to determine what that's going to be that year.
So that basic whole line is the 40.5.
Correct. Includes all the costs for that.
And
Salary plus all the other indirect costs.
And I'll find the spreadsheet and send it to each of you so you can see it in detail.
So as you talk with your representatives, remind them that we are paying approximately $2.3 million a year to the state for them to give us an additional 40.5 CPS workers in the county. That's just purely, that's an elected deal that we do because we feel like it's necessary.
And just wanted to correct something I spoke to you earlier about when you asked about the reduction in staff and social workers. I did get some more clarification. I stepped out. They were over budget, and so the state, so they are inactivating 31 positions for our region, but those were borrowed positions. They're not inactivating permanent caseworker positions. They were positions that were loaned to our region when we were in crisis a year ago from other parts of the state. So Tarrant County's only losing 2 permanent positions, but both of those were in support positions. They were not direct caseworkers in the field.
So what happened to the 31 people who they loaned us?
They're inactivating those for now. And they weren't loaned just to Tarrant County. They were loaned to our entire, the surrounding counties around
So
us.
how many are they unloaning from us in Tarrant County?
I don't have that exact number, but I would guess about 8 to 10.
So my statement was correct. They're basically taking 31 social workers that have been in this region, and they're taking them away from this region.
Yes, I'm being told it's vacant positions. They're vacant positions they are inactivating for now because if they were filled, they would be over budget.
So they're not filling vacant positions?
Correct. Majority of those were loaned. They were called higher head loaned positions. So they
Why
are.
don't we go back to the state and tell them that those 31 positions were positions that we were paying for, and since they didn't fill them, they need to send us the money back.
I will pass that message along. But like I said, I wanted to correct that. I apologize for that misinformation earlier. But yes, the state doesn't ever plan for all their positions to be filled when they do their budget. It's always assumed there's going to be a certain percentage of vacant positions.
Their employees are not filled and not, because we really, and I'm battling back and forth, but it's not like we know the names of the 40.5 positions that we supply. We just know we pay them for 40.5 positions that we feel like we need extra in Tarrant County.
Correct.
So let's say that they were going to put 100 here, and we said you need 140. So we pay them for 40 positions. And that should come to 140 positions. But
Correct.
now you're telling me we got 31 vacancies, and oh, by the way, it's their vacancies, not our vacancies.
Oh, well, yes. I mean, the money, the 40.5 are.
This is getting worse and worse.
Well, you want to hear something even better? Okay.
No, I do want to, because
let me
I guess I
just- let me
fail to
just-
understand
sorry.
why they're supposed to have 100 here, and we've said we don't think 100 is enough, we're going to pay for 40
Right.
more. Now you're telling me they only have 110, but they're still taking money for our 40.
Maybe I should try to, try to one more time, but
If you
clarify
could
it a little
try
bit.
one more time, that'd be
Okay.
great.
We were in if you remember, a major state of crisis in the spring of 2016 due to, they had an excessive amount of vacancies. That's led to some of the media stories that we heard in our region. To address that crisis, they had too many vacancies, they couldn't fill them fast enough. So the state took some positions from other regions that were not in crisis, and they called them higher ahead positions, and they loaned them to our region here, which was really more Dallas, but Tarrant got some of those positions. We got between around 30 to 40, if I don't have the number in front of me, but they called them higher head positions. The goal of being that they could go ahead and quickly hire so those people could start their training, because it's a 3 to 4 month training process. So that way, when they were done being trained, they could immediately go help out in the field. It was a way to try to get more people trained faster, because the vacancy rate was turning over so quickly. When they loaned us those positions, we were told the positions were only for the remainder of that fiscal year, just to help out the crisis, and they were going to take them away in September 2016. They didn't. They left the positions here, so our county and our region continued to utilize them because they were here and available. And now, because of the budget shortage, they're taking some of those back. They're still leaving us 3 units worth, so about 24 of those higher ed positions. So when they say that's why they say they're not taking positions away, because they were never our permanent positions in our area. They were loaned to us.
Vacancies that we had not been able to fill.
Correct.
So when they took those loaned positions back, we should have had vacancies that we could have filled.
Well, we continue to have vacancies, just our vacancy rate has declined since last summer. It's done so well with the new raises with staff retention. That's why they're not able to meet their budget, is what I've been told. They
It's
allot.
hell having a debate with the CPA, isn't it?
I think what happens is that regardless of our funding piece, the state funding piece is that they've overspent their budget, and what they're trying
Correct.
to do is bring your budget back in line. So
Yes.
that's what they're doing.
I would like a reconciliation. For the last 2 or 3 years, it basically says if the state was supposed to have 40 or 50 or 100 social workers, and if we decided that we needed an extra 40 and a half, add that 40 and a half to it, and then compare with the actual number of social workers we had. Because it seems to me like we've been paying and they've been having vacancies that they haven't had to pay. So just,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
just kind of,
Yeah, we'll help you with that.
Okay, that's fine.
thank you.
Thank you.
It's gonna turn out that we're gonna do what they put down here.
Well, Commissioner, I hear what you're saying, but not necessarily, because we make the election right here today. We're going to determine that we're going to spend $2.6 million.
And this commissioner is not gonna cut the number of people over there and
I understand that but when they start doing everything to us, and maybe that's the decision we all make. But at the same time, when they start talking about cutting our revenue or cutting our expenditures, do we give it up here or do we give it up in Road and Bridge?
So maybe you want the split ratio to be based on filled positions, not total positions. Is that what you're thinking?
I mean, we collectively at some point, and it may have been 6, 7, 8 years ago, it may have been longer than that.
I've been 30.
May have been 30, decided we were going to pay the state for an extra 40 and a half people because we felt like there wasn't enough. Well, if the state has used that and basically declined and decreased the amount that they put in here because of that, then it's not right. If we're gonna do it, at least I want the representatives and the rest of the folks to realize that we're doing that extra and that the state's not doing their part.
Okay.
Have we passed that particular one?
CPS, I think we have had a vote, yes. Okay, now we're going to move to public assistance. Schneider, do you have any cuts in that? That's your budget.
Yes, I mean, what we have in there is what,
Did we do AgriLife?
It's coming up, sir.
Huh?
It's coming up.
next.
So there's no changes?
there's no changes above what's recommended. Oh, no, I'm sorry, there is, I'm sorry. There's this one contract that this fiscal year is supposed to be the last year. It's with, Raymond.
$49,000
Yes,
decrease?
yes.
Reintegration.
It's a recovery, which we're in support, that's one of the contracts that we monitor, and we're in support of the recommendation.
Yes, okay,
You have a motion?
move for
A
approval.
question.
Do I have a second?
Redemption Bridge?
No. We had a request from Kathy. We had a request for support from Family Pathfinders.
From who?
Family Pathfinders.
I'm not aware of that.
It's what? Housing finance. Oh, okay. Very good.
I still have a motion, but no second.
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Just a minute. We did not get a vote on CPS.
Okay, so, but we had a motion in a second.
On CPS?
Yeah.
I don't think we did.
Okay, let's
Well, I'll
start
make a
off.
motion to approve.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
AgriLife.
Move approval.
second,
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Veteran Services, they are satisfied with their budget.
move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Historical Commission,
That's the all caps.
Move approval.
Second. Motion is second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Resource Connection.
Oh, different, it's on a separate tab.
Resource,
Jamie, no issues?
No issues, we're satisfied,
Thank you.
Move approval.
Second,
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
we're
Now,
not
this
going
doesn't come out of general fund, does it?
No,
No.
sir, it does not.
Okay, we're going to move into the judiciary, on civil, on,
Anybody here from any of the civil courts?
civil district.
Yeah, civil district court, no. So the next motion would include the 17th District Court, 48th, 67th, 96th, 141st, 153rd, 236th, 342nd, and 348th. Oh, and 352nd.
Move approval.
second,
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Family.
Anybody here from the Family District Court? So the next motion would include the 231st, 233rd, 322nd, 324th, 325th, 360th.
Move for approval.
Second.
The motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
County courts at law?
Anybody here? Next motion would be the county court at law, number 1, 2, and 3.
Move for approval.
Second.
The motion is second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Probate court.
Anybody here from probate? So we covered numbers 1 and 2.
Move approval.
Second.
Is this where the additional bailiff, is it in this?
No, it's actually, the bailiff would be in the sheriff's department's budget, but it was in reference to probate court number 2.
So if you see monkey do, we're probably gonna have to have another one in King's Court when.
It could be.
I guess the question is that, I mean, this kind of is strange the way it ended up coming through to us. The court decided they needed another bailiff, the sheriff gives them to them, and then we, without it coming through, and I guess we just don't have any control over this.
You'd be correct.
That'd be correct. That's,
Yeah, I think the judges have the authority, if that office was voted in that way.
the state district court has the,
Well, probate does too, doesn't it? Or does it?
I'm sorry, I lost the question here.
So by statute, does the probate court, can they appoint their own bailiff?
No, they may not.
But we have to provide security in the
We
court.
provide security, that's correct.
which is the only ones that basically by state law, we have to, if the judge says we want the bailiff, they get the bailiff.
We
Because we have a
still,
lot of associate judges
right.
that do not have bailiffs.
Well, a majority of the associate judges do have bailiffs. In
Okay,
family,
well, maybe the
in
next-
family court, for instance, we have a bailiff for the associate court and for the district court. Now, they run simultaneous dockets. With the district courts, they have separate courtrooms. When we funded the associate judges full-time for years in the probate court, the associate judges were part-time employees. And they handled primarily mental health duties. Then after we funded the associate judges full-time, there was an agreement amongst the probate courts, of which Judge Furchill was one of them, that they would not require a bailiff. That changed over the years. As they assigned more and different duties in probate court number 2 to the associate judge, it did put more of a strain and need for a second bailiff in that court. Again, they would take their primary bailiff and as often as possible have them in the associate judge's court. Wasn't always possible. The best of my knowledge, probate 2, their associate judge primary duty is still mental health.
And granted, and you know, as they explained that this morning, I think it does make a lot of sense because the associate judge is going to JPS instead of having to work with getting that person into court here.
They're also going to some courthouses. They didn't mention that, but they are
They do go to, you're
doing
exactly right.
probation and, yeah,
At least,
And only
probate number 2 is
only
going there.
probate 2 does that.
yeah.
And that saves a great deal of convenience. It's a lot more convenient
For the residents.
For the residents who don't have to come downtown. And a lot of these times, these folks are the elderly and they just,
Absolutely.
And then, in that situation, they are hearing more wills as opposed to mental health cases.
and I guess my question circles more around just the fact that this all of a sudden happened during the year without it really coming to court for us to.
It's not all of a sudden. That request has actually been out there for several years.
Okay.
It what?
The request for additional bailiff for probate court has been out there for several years.
And so if the new judge in probate 1 decides to do the same type of thing, then we could be looking at another bailiff for that.
We could. We could.
Okay. All right.
We're now going to go to criminal district court.
Speaking of which,
Oh, there they are. You were running, weren't you? Got there a little faster. Okay, so probate 2, and probate 1 may have.
Probate number 1, do you have any comments regarding your budget?
Just here to answer any questions. And say thanks.
Thank you.
Criminal District Court.
We've approved your budget and discussed a little bit about bailiffs and stuff along that type of lines, but we appreciate you coming over. We appreciate your years of service. I guess you'll be with us at least through one more budget season.
God willing.
That's right. And we thank you again very much, Judge King. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Criminal District Courts.
The criminal district court judges are all satisfied with their budgets.
So that would be Criminal District Court 1, 2, 3, 4, 213th, 297th, 371st, 372nd, 396th, and the 432nd.
Move approval of all of the above.
Second.
And motion is second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Magistrate Court.
We're satisfied with our magistrate court budget.
He's gearing up for something.
Yes, I am gearing
Here
up.
we are.
Magistrate Courts. So there's no changes?
No changes, sir.
Move approval.
Second. I was going to say, nobody likes you. Nobody's going to approve your, please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Criminal Court Administration.
We do have some comments on that. Judge Whitley and commissioners, and this is under the direction of the criminal judges. We met last Wednesday, and they requested I move forward with this request. So, the commissioners courts, the criminal courts understand and appreciate the physical constraints that the commissioners courts are under, and we do appreciate all the hard work. I believe this is budget number 17 I've done with the budget office since I've been with the county, and working with the budget office is always very professional, and we're very, we understand that they have to present a budget that balances all the needs that impact the departments. We actually requested 3 new positions for FY 2018. We believe are important and necessary for the efficiency operation of the courts. We need additional administrative support staff to address docket and pretrial management issues that are related to the Harris County lawsuit. That is a looming issue that is facing the courts, and so we're doing everything we can to address those type of issues. Understanding that all that is facing the Commissioner's Court, we're gonna wait till next year to address those 2 positions for FY 2019. It is important to note, and the Commissioner's Court needs to be aware that as it relates to pretrial management, we hope to be coming to Commissioner's Court to implement a static risk assessment for pretrial defendants to allow magistrates to set reasonable bonds based on risk and allow for low-cost bonds for arrested persons. Such bonds will be based on identifiable risk factors that would enable low-risk offenders to bond out while their case works their way through the system. The criminal courts are working on a risk assessment project with the purchasing department and the civil division of the district attorney's office. The courts needs this risk assessment in place as soon as practical. Although the courts are working with the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office for a long-term plan of central magistration to address Sandra Bland issues and other issues that are related to how Tarrant County handles people that have been magistrated. We need to address the risk assessment as soon as possible to protect individual liberty of defendants regardless of their economic status. This is the core component of the Harris County lawsuit is that indigent people are being held in jail only because of their inability to pay, and we need to address that as soon as possible. But speaking of liberty, and that is why I'm here today, the criminal courts are requesting a creation of a program manager position in the Tarrant County Veterans Court. The courts propose the funding of this position come from the general fund. As you're aware, Texas law requires the operation of Veterans Court in this county. The purpose to address the needs of the veterans who have served our country and secured our freedom and liberty now find themselves in the criminal court system. The courts understand it is our duty to serve and support those veterans that have done the same for us. Currently, the Tarrant County Veterans Court, which is headed by the Honorable Judge Brent Carr, serves approximately 50 veterans. Unfortunately, as of today, there are 88 veterans on the waiting list. They will at least wait 8 to 10 months before they can enter a program and begin to receive treatment and support that they need and desire. During that waiting period, they will continue to struggle with the issues that plague them that led them into the criminal justice system. Tarrant County is one of the few counties that is lucky to have the state support their Veterans Court through grant funds. However, the state has cut our funding by $105,000 and the current grant funding used to operate the Veterans Court. Although the Tarrant County will receive a portion of this funding in the future, this source is shrinking and we need to address it. If this court were to create a program manager position within the general fund, we would be able to better utilize the funding that the grant provides to provide additional case management. The Honorable Judge Chuck Vanover has agreed to assist Judge Carr in the supervision of additional participants. Although the courts could utilize a total of 3 new positions to address the needs of the traditional Veterans Court participants and to implement a high-needs, high-risk Veterans Court, they recognize the court is not in position to expand Veterans Court programming at this time. Instead, the court's desire to focus on shortening the waiting list for treatment. So we would like you to strongly consider adding a program manager out of the grant funds, moving it into the general fund to allow us to shrink what is a waiting list today of 88 veterans.
So,
It's
the
roughly
88 that you have, you're saying that if you had this clerk, all of a sudden you can get these 88 in?
No, we're not saying that at all. What we're saying is we have an 88-person waiting list, and if we were to clone our existing Veterans Court, we would be able to address about 50 of those. So we'd still have a waiting list, but the wait would be shorter.
How much shorter?
It would cut from right now, if we were fully implemented, we could take at least 25 to 30 off of the waiting list immediately, but it would shorten the waiting list from about 8 to 10 months to probably 2 to 3 months.
Would an alternative be to look at a grade 18 instead of the program manager?
No, because we would prefer to have the program manager in the general fund, because as usually when we fund these types of programs, we have a program manager per court, but we're asking this program manager to do the existing program to supervise 2 courts. So we're asking
2 courts, but both Veterans Court.
Both Veterans Court, that's correct. So we're going to use the grant funds that are currently funding the program manager to hire a grade 18.
That absolutely would not provide you any assistance whatsoever by funding grade 18.
Well, yes, it would provide us assistance. Okay. That would be correct, but that is not what we desire.
Well, what would you be willing to take? Might be a better way to answer that question.
We'd be willing to take a grade 18, Your Honor.
Sold America.
I guess I'm wanting to make sure that this waiting list, so if we create another court, you're saying that those 50 will all of a sudden come in there and there won't be any problems getting them into programs?
That's correct.
So the waiting list is purely because we don't have a system to move them through?
We don't have the capacity to serve the ones that are on the waiting list at this time, and we're trying to increase our capacity to serve them.
It's a capacity issue.
Correct, sir.
The system works, it's just the capacity.
Is the capacity.
But that's probably the case in every specialty court. There's waiting lists.
Correct.
Okay.
But this one is the longest.
Yeah, and I think I do have a little bit more, feel a little bit more responsibility to the veterans than, maybe I shouldn't, but I do, from that perspective. And so what you're asking for, though, I want to be sure, all 3 of these positions were for that one court?
No, we could actually staff up 3 new positions to handle the Veterans Court capacity. No, we were asking for an administrative assistant and additional judicial staff counsel to address administrative support for pre-trial management as it relates to the Harris County lawsuit. However, we're still addressing those issues in the way we want to currently address what's facing Tarrant County on the issues that are in the Harris County lawsuit is by implementing a risk assessment at this time.
And so Debbie, what you're suggesting is instead of creating a grade 72 position, that we instead create a grade 18 position, which would be a non-exempt position.
Correct.
And, but that's pretty close to equivalent to a 72.
I'm about to give you the dollar amount. I brought everything with me but a salary schedule.
Great.
Angela's looking at, but she's fixing to tell you.
74,473 and change.
One is hourly, the other one is,
One is a program manager, the other was a caseworker. I don't know, that's not what we call them, but.
Right.
So that's 74,000, that's including benefits.
Correct.
It's about a $25,000 difference between what we're paying our program manager and what that would cost.
Correct.
What's the one in Judge Carr's court? That's a grant position right now.
Correct. And
are you saying you're going to give up that grant position?
No.
no.
Their desire is for us to pick up the funding for the grant position, which is this one that you see right here at $98,000. And then they will in turn.
You keep saying 98. We can't see that, and it doesn't show up on our screen here.
Can't you see it in front of you?
No, I can't see it in front of me. If I turn around, I can see
I mean,
it behind
no,
me.
it's not on your screen in front of you.
No.
no, we only have
Really?
2 screens.
Huh, sorry. 98,956.
Can you see that?
That's the cost of the program manager.
We got it.
And their goal is to bring the grant position program manager into the general fund and then turn around and fund a caseworker grade 18 out of the grant.
That is correct.
So what job requirements can be met by a grade 72 instead of 18? Are they?
The grade 72 is a management level position that manages the program. The grade 18 position manages the participants. And the difference between the two is that the actual case management, dealing with the participants, dealing with the making sure they're receiving treatment, making sure they're following the program. That's the street level.
I'm talking about the job skills.
Yes,
You know, whether education, years of experience, the type of experience.
As a rule, we hire bachelor's degree employees to be the case manager, and we hire master's degree level employees to be the program manager.
So in 18, what would we be hiring?
A bachelor's degree leveled employee.
In what field? In social work?
In social work.
Okay,
Right.
and a 72 will give you a master.
Would give you a master's.
What
and
about
our,
years of experience?
A master's level social worker is what we have right now.
And to be clear, the grade 72 is currently funded out of the grant. The funding for that position is not going away. Their goal is to simply move the program manager to the general fund, free up funds within the grant to hire the caseworker participant person.
And
okay.
And that's the goal, and the state funding has been reduced by 105,000. So at some point, we're going to have to address Veterans Court as the state funding continues to reduce.
So I think the question that needs to be asked is, if you get a grade 18, will you have the same desired results as far as work output as you would with the program manager?
Yes, sir.
There it is.
I think I like a grade 18.
Move approval.
Second.
Of the grade 18.
Grade 18.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously, and I'm sure I'll hear from Judge Carr later on today.
Do you have any information on what kind of risk assessment tool y'all are going to be looking at?
We are looking at a static risk assessment. I'll defer to the attorneys to explain why that is better, but when it comes to dealing with our defense bar. But the idea of a static risk assessment is we use raw criminal data with no interview of the defendant in order to give a risk score. So that way there is there's nothing that can be admissible in court later by what the risk assessment is.
That's kind of like the one that the Arnold Foundation.
Very similar to the one in the Arnold Foundation. Our long-term vision by the courts is to go to the Arnold Foundation. However,
I'm told that that's probably the better one out there.
yes, sir, it sure is. But it just, again, there's a lot of issues that involve with implementing that, and then, so we need something as soon as possible. So it's,
Commissioner Brooks, that assessment instrument it's a two-step process. What we're trying to do is to get one that we can use immediately, working toward the Arnold.
Good.
Okay, Debbie, what line number under your Excel worksheet did we just add money to?
Line 1679.
And how much did we add to that?
I have placed 74,474.
Okay. And I think this other stuff that you're talking about, Greg, the whole thing with Harris County. I know that the bail bonds folks have submitted some sort of, are they talking with you a little bit about
They presented a proposal, but I think they presented it at the,
They did.
we did, and we're in discussions, and the long-term goal of the courts is to ensure that people aren't, that their liberty isn't held based on their economic status. And so we're going to make sure that we implement a plan that addresses that issue. And
y'all are considering their proposal?
That is being discussed with the courts. That would be, yes, sir.
And that's where it needs to be discussed.
Yeah, I agree, but I will, in the meetings that we've been having at CUC, Judge Emmett has been trying to keep us up to speed on what's happened down there. And he keeps saying that all indications are from talking with them that they're coming to Tarrant County next.
If y'all would like a copy of what they presented to me, I'll be happy to ship it to everybody.
I would like to see it.
Okay, I'll do that. Steve?
Yes, sir.
If you'll handle that this afternoon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else?
For criminal courts administration, they're a happy group now, sir.
Do you have a vote on that?
So why did you start off with telling us they'd been happy at 18? Why did we have to coax that out of you? They're a happy group now at 18, just,
I believe
it's an issue.
It's a philosophical difference.
I got a question though. What is this $3 on the criminal attorney support appointment deal? Attorney appointment deal. What is this $3 travel?
If I had to guess, it's a toll charge.
Huh?
If I had to guess, it's a toll charge.
Where are we talking? What line?
Move down to opposite.
Well, they have no budget for it, but there's $3.
1736. It's a toll charge.
Okay.
It's part of the roll-up budget for travel
For
and education.
education, yeah.
Are we ready to move on?
Have we voted on this one?
Yes.
Well, I hear a no and I hear a yes, but their yeses over here outright, your no's over there. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Well, we got a couple.
You're not done with me, Your Honor.
Grand jury.
They're happy with their budget.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Criminal court appointees.
We're happy with our budget.
Still standing up here?
Yes, sir.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Mental health courts.
We're happy with our budget.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Oh, he has all of these too.
Yes.
They're all good.
Yes, all the county criminal courts,
One
are
through 10.
1 through 10 are satisfied with their budget recommendation.
Move for approval of all.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And I'll go sit down, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Okay. Only one we do was 8. How about 2:30?
What's the goal for lunchtime around here?
In about 15 minutes.
Let's move
Unless
on.
y'all want to go now.
Let's go.
All right,
Let's
let's, we can do JPs in 5 seconds.
Okay.
Justices of the peace.
1 through 8.
Are any here?
They all called in,
They are good?
except for precinct 8, so they're not here. Yes.
What'd you say?
Move approval.
They all
of
called
1
in that
through
they were
8.
satisfied with the exception of precinct 8.
So move for approval of JP 1 through 7.
No, 1 through 8.
1 through 8?
We have a motion.
1 through 8.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, once it's ready, the next one is the district attorney's office, unless you're satisfied with your budget.
I just have like a couple minutes. It's very fast, I promise.
It's up to the court.
Let's go.
How long is those 2 items gonna take?
2 minutes.
It's fast.
Let's
One
go.
piece of paper.
It
Go
may
for
be
it,
fast
CD.
depending upon what we say.
Hit them and move.
First, if you don't mind, I'd like to address the funding of the sheriff's bailiff position, because it was brought to my attention, thank you, by our county clerk, that SB 42 had passed, which in the caption of it says that it's a $5 filing fee for court security. So I emailed my office, we went back and reviewed the law, and we were going to try to estimate how much income that would be to the county to perhaps pay for the bailiff for the JPS courts. And all of that money, the $5 fee, is a pass-through to the state comptroller. Not a dime of it stays.
How nice.
Just letting you know. But it was so there you have it. The caption was a little deceptive. A little.
Imagine that.
I want to thank you very much for funding our Michael Morton attorneys that will keep up with the DME that we're going to be dealing with. I did have a second ask, which was for the 6th attorney that we'd requested that's been denied. I'm actually fine with that. I just wanted to explain to you why we had requested it and to let you know that, based on what the filings look like, we may be back mid-year, but I'll let you know. So the last legislative session passed a law that goes into effect on September 1 that allows non-disclosure of prior DWI convictions. That is a complete change in the law. In the past, you couldn't get a non-disclosure for a conviction, a straight probation for DWI. It simply wasn't allowed. The legislature has made that law change. Currently, our non-disclosure expunction section, which is right now we are 1 lawyer and a part-time, does about 1,000 to 1,200 cases a year. Beginning with that law change, we have the potential, if we just look at eligible cases back for the last 10 years, we're looking at 27,000 new cases. 27,000 people are not going to file, but if 1% of those file, it's still a significant change in what we have. So just to let you know that law change is happening, we'll keep data, and as needed, I'll come back and report. And other than that, thank you very much for my budget.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Please vote.
That was exactly 2 minutes. Thank you.
Motion passed unanimously. We will break now for lunch and start back around 1:15.
1:15.
1 o'clock.
I've got to go for lunch, so I'll be back.
They live in Kingwood also.
That's short. Did you drive? No, I was over at the City Club and I just didn't stay for the program.
She worked at the village until Hammer's one, and then she quit.
People don't listen at all today. We're gonna cut everybody's budget here in a minute.
All right.
Let's start with this guy that's coming up next.
Good idea to me.
Okay, let's go ahead and we'll start with the district clerk. He is satisfied with his budget.
Move approval.
That's 2 years in a row.
That's 6 words.
Second.
Exactly $2,000 less compared to last year. Thank you.
We have a motion to second about all the discussion we need.
If you can do 2, you can do 4.
Motion passes unanimously.
Now go to the county clerk.
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
So first of all, Debbie, thank you. She did a great job. She worked with my new chief deputy. She was very fair in our budget. I want to talk about, just kind of like my other colleagues, what's coming down the road and what we need to look forward to. And some of the things that she did not recommend, I just kind of want to put it on the radar. So first of all, Commissioner Wynn, you talked about additional cost. E-filing in the civil side of our world, it started in 2015. We added 4 project positions to help us get through this. And when you electronically file, it's going to take more time. And it's taking more time with our intake clerks and our probate clerks. And so our 4 project positions, we went to Debbie and said, we are seeing that now we need them to become court clerk positions. So off the bat, Debbie did give me a grade 16 probate clerk, but I knew that was coming with the new judge that came in saying she's running dual courts. So she did fund that for us. And she gave us 115 intake clerk, and in my office we went and found a second intake clerk open position. So I have 2 intake clerks coming and 1 probate clerk. Those project positions, while they're helpful to us, I just want you to know that for the last 2 years we've had 16 people get in those project positions and leave. They're positions that don't offer retirement. So the people get in there, we train them, and they leave. And they move over to other positions. So project positions really are not beneficial to us as we go down the road. So we have our 16, we have our 115. We are probably going to ask for another 15 next budget cycle. And I just wanted to let you know that's what's going on. We have electronic filing coming up in criminal courts. And again, the process and I guess the thought process of the Texas Supreme Court and the Criminal Court of Appeals is that they will mandate us to take things electronically, but they run halfway down the field because they will not mandate the judges to go electronic. So the clerks, the district and county clerks, are required to accept electronically, and we do accept electronically. That is more of an intense process. We print that paper because our judges have the option not to go electronic. So paper is still being passed to the judges. Most of my judges are looking forward to going electronic, but if they don't, that is cost that's going to be passed on to their budget because I will eventually make my record official electronically, and it'll be their responsibility to print those cases out, review them, and get them back to us to scan back in. So the last thing we asked for that we did not get considered is our passport position. And I talked to Commissioner Fickus about that. We are doing great with our passport business. We've done 10,000 in the last year. And we are on probation until 2018, but we did approach the federal government and ask if we could have one more position out at Southlake, and they agreed to it. So we ran the numbers by Debbie, we ran the numbers by Renee, and they don't feel comfortable with the numbers and the projections, so they didn't recommend it. But I'm here to say that our estimated revenue next year is $400,000. We're on pace to beat that this year. Our clerks since January average about $1,500 in sales every week that they conduct on their own. And, it slows down, and I think that's why the auditor said we have a slow time in July, but our numbers picks back up during the holiday and spring break. I feel comfortable that we'll be able to break even if we add another passport position.
I did not notice a slowdown at Southwest at all.
In
fact, they were lined up all the way up and down the hall.
We've done 10,000 in a year, and Southwest is busy, but Southlake is just unbelievably busy, and we turn people away every day, crowds and crowds of people. So I believe we'll hit neutral, but it's not Renee's place to say the crystal ball. I think we could do it, but it's certainly up to y'all. I understand we're in budget constraints, but if we get that position, I think we'll do well with it. And in 2018, you're going to be wanting other passport offices. We just got on August 2nd a surprise audit at Southwest, and we passed with flying colors. The federal government came in. We were busy. They did an audit and said we've hit every mark. And they said my team is highly qualified and trained, and we're doing exactly what is expected of us as an accepting facility. So the passport position, it's up to y'all. I think we'll make it, but
Can we get that put on our list?
To be determined?
Yeah.
How much it?
I have no idea.
Hold on.
That's the highlight. 54.2.
How much?
54,206.
And we were even looking at, waiting till December to fund it, to just closer to the holiday, and then run it that way and just save us some money there. But, it's really y'all's call. I mean, I think, I feel confident we'll make it, but, I don't want to sit here and say 100% is going to happen. If I did the budget, would certainly have recommended it.
And based on the county clerk for passports alone, their total budget right now for 18 is $450,000. And Ms. Garcia mentioned that there's $400,000 currently budgeted for passport revenue. So we're about $50,000 behind just from the start. I did ask them to get with the auditor's office, discuss it further. Talking to the chief deputy of the county clerk's office, I said, ask for a few more tidbits of information to help put connect some dots. Told them that we still had some time, primarily the month of August, to gather some information and step back and look at it one more time.
So let's look at it. I'll put it in the to-be determined list and we'll.
Right.
Yep. It's up to y'all. We would love to have it, but if we can't, I absolutely understand. But Debbie did a great job, and we've got the two positions, but electronic filing is going to be troublesome in the future, probably in 18.
What kind of lead time do you need on training this person?
Oh, gosh. To accept electronic filings, particularly in the probate, it takes 3
Now I'm talking
4
about your
months.
passport.
Passport? How long does it take to passport? 3 months. 3 months.
So if
90
we
days.
pass it, if we get to the point of determining we're gonna do it, you're starting in December, and that will give you the 3 months you need.
Right.
Yep. Be ready for spring break. That's it.
You want to make a motion?
I move we approve the budget and put that position on the list.
The passport. Second.
We have a motion second to pass the budget, put the passport person on the to-be determined list. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Court.
Thank y'all.
Domestic relations, they're satisfied.
Move approval. Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Jury services.
Satisfied.
Jury services are satisfied.
Move approval.
Second.
We've got a few adjustments that we have passed along to the clerk that are already on here.
Got a motion is second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Special judges.
Special judges is a budget we oversee.
All of our judges are special.
They are. Don't ask me where this title came from. It's been there ever since I've been here. The thing I want to note here is you can see that we've moved $180,000 up to temporary salaries. We are attempting to slowly put our substitute court reporters that don't operate under a business federal ID number. We're slowly trying to put them on the payroll. So it's a process that'll be slow, but that groundwork has started. So it's just moving some of the allocation from professional services to temporary.
Do you want to explain that again?
Right now, we
Kind of
pay
caught my attention when you said,
federal ID.
yeah.
Right now, we pay all of our substitute court reporters as through accounts payable. Therefore, it hits this line item on here that says professional services.
Yes.
Some of them operate as a business and so have a business ID. Others are individuals and work under their social security number. So we're trying to identify those, not we, the auditor's office, is trying to identify those that are operating under their individual social security number and slowly put them on the payroll.
Why does that?
It's called an independent contractor and whether or not they meet the test. And we're trying to take the approach to be safe so that we meet the requirements of the test and have them classified where they belong.
So wait a minute, you're telling me we can take somebody that's incorporated?
No.
No, we're
Well,
trying
you
to,
said business.
we're
Federal
trying
Social
to move
Security.
individuals who would not possibly qualify as independent contractors and have them become county temporary or part-time employees. Because that's where the IRS would classify.
Some operate as a business. Some.
Well, and that's my point. If
So
we
we're-
got one that decides they're gonna operate as a business, they ought to all have Schedule Cs. Or they have an 1120 that they're filing.
I would rather not discuss this here, sir. you're talking about federal tax liability and risk to the county. And so I would think we're taking a conservative approach. We'd like to have further discussions.
I just want them all treated the same way, Renee.
And we're working on it, yes, sir.
Because I'm not gonna accept us not treating them the same way. So put those line items together, or I wanna hold on to this budget until we do.
I'm going to say we'll hold on this one.
Yeah, let's do that.
So will be to be continued.
Correct.
Yes.
So the special judges are not special.
They're not special. They're special, we're just gonna get to talk to them, I guess, offline.
It's a joke, okay, judges, if you're watching?
No.
Don't worry, they're not watching.
Courts and Judiciary is another budget, oh, I'm sorry. No, we're going to hold it. Do we vote on the whole?
We're going to do it to be continued.
Right, and we still
That means the
vote?
whole budget comes back to the court.
Right.
So that's how we need to do that.
If we don't vote on it, does it not come back to the court? To be continued. Does somebody want to move that we'll continue this discussion?
So
We're not going to approve anything in this deal.
That's correct.
Is that your request?
Yes,
Is that
please.
your motion? I'll second.
And we got, I think he motioned and he seconded. Without further discussion, it passes unanimously.
I sure thought you made the motion, Judge.
Courts, Judiciary,
This is another budget that we oversee. You'll see there's what appears to be a large increase in council fees, but in essence, as needed, that will get transferred to the other courts. It's like a temporary holding area for council fees. But we are recommending its approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
County Judge.
I'm happy.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion to second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
County Administrator, we're satisfied.
Move approval.
Second.
On what, GKs? There is a change that's been added after the fact to the administrator's office. Please take that in consideration under professional services.
36.
No, it's double that. That was added back.
We're still satisfied.
You see,
We're just you on it.
Huh?
where's the witness protection line?
You got a motion and a
I don't
second?
got nothing yet.
I move approval.
With the, what change were you talking about?
Professional
We already
services
had a
line
motion.
goes up by 36.
Right, it's on your screen. It's on your file.
36,250, okay, yes.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Non-departmental, both general fund and road and bridge.
Again, this is our departments that we oversee. We've discussed a lot of the elements of it this morning, but if there are any questions, we're happy to answer them. Otherwise, we are satisfied with it. Yeah, with this one change here, which was discussed in your overview that was sent to you. Has to do with capital transfers.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion?
That includes road and bridge.
Correct. Ditto on debt service. Oh,
Motion passes unanimously.
Debt service.
we're recommending, yeah.
Second.
We have a motion to second, and again, this is where I ask, this does not reflect yet the estimated
The
savings
refi.
is the refiling or refunding.
Refunding it does.
It does, and so that's why it's down 418,000. Okay. Do I have a motion or a second?
So moved, motion.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
County Auditor,
item I wanted to discuss with the court, we're happy with the operating budget that you see that's presented. Last year, though, we had asked for and gone through the process for a package for electronic work papers for the auditor's office to use. It was approved initially by the steering committee and was part of the original capital budget. And at some point, IT removed it from the capital budget, and there was miscommunication between the budget office and IT, and no one told the auditor's office until about October, end of September or October, so it was too late to have anyone reconsider including that last year, so we didn't know, so we waited to this year. This year it was included, and it ranked out and was in the budget, and then Ms. Snyder, working through capital, it's one of the items that was removed. So I'm here asking you to include it. There's not very many people left that do audits that don't have electronic work papers. We use Excel, and we've used Excel since, many years, but there are limitations with using Excel. We'd like to have an electronic work paper package. The cost of the software the first year is approximately $78,000, $79,000, and then the annual license after that's about $8,800. And so we're asking that you consider possibly putting that back in the budget.
Move approval of the county auditor's budget, including the items she just listed.
Second.
What's
You
it?
want to explain it, Debbie Sue?
I know, but what's the dollar amount?
It did, where it ranked, she took out several projects, not just this one.
There were 3 new strategic projects. The only one we recommended the funding for was number 1. This one was number 3.
And last year, what happened?
I'm going to have to step back and refresh my memory on what happened last year, so I'm not prepared to answer that.
The bottom line was it was removed, though, and we were not communicated with, because I would have been here last year had I known that it was going to be removed.
Okay.
It ranked number 3, right?
This year.
Yeah, there were only 3 new strategic projects,
This
and
year.
it was ranked number 3. The only one we recommended was number 1, which was replacement of the end-of-life court agenda system.
So why do we go through all of the process of grading and ranking these projects when
So we'll know what
it's just going
number
to come
one is?
down to you?
So we'll know what number 1 is.
When you have a veto?
Well, no, I think we all.
Called the recommendation.
She just basically asked them to prioritize, so she figures out how far down on the priority list she wants to recommend to us to do. Okay.
So what'd you say the dollar amount was, Renee?
The estimated cost for the first year is $78,969, and then the annual maintenance after that is $8,795.
And I'm going to assume that that we do not have the capability within SAP.
No, they don't have anything like
They don't
this,
have
sir.
anything like that.
Not to my knowledge, no, sir.
So what was the second ranked project that we're skipping over to fund the third?
It was a learning management system, which an initiative came out, HR. And it's like $83,600 with a $60,000 annual operating cost. In the beginning, they were all there. In the end, number 1.
I have a motion and a second. If there's no additional discussion, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. So that adds how much to the capital?
You said 78,969. Yeah, 78,969. That's
And
not
then we
bad.
gotta go up somewhere. Is the first year, does that include operating the first year?
Yes.
So there won't be any operating costs this year.
Yes.
Okay, budgets.
Oh,
I'll bet she's satisfied.
I am. How'd you guess?
Move approval.
Second. A motion to second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Tax assessor collector.
Tax office is good. In fact, the tax office is great, but I don't want to brag.
I greatly move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
elections, and they are satisfied with the budget.
Move for approval of elections.
Second.
budget.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Get out while the getting's good. Thank y'all.
Information technology.
Good afternoon, Judge, Commissioners. I have a few comments about the IT budget. I'll just hit my points here. Number one, the overall IT budget this year, year over year compared to fiscal 17 is down, and this is just the budget excluding personnel. Is down 13%. If you look at the IT only, new capital asks that this would tie into the infrastructure efforts that we've had over the last few years. Those are down about 55%. And the operating budget, however, you will see a little flex there of 6.2%, and that is accounted for by the $792,000 relative to the mainframe outsourcing. And then if you look at the total combined operating budget, in this case, I'm looking at all of IT and CUC obligations for the operating side. It was a small increase of about 0.9% over fiscal 17. And then one of the things I want to call out here is that because sometimes this information is not, we IT do a terrible job of communicating it. One of the things I want to share here is that you will begin to see that from about 2014 through 15, we reached some sort of a peak point, and then we're now on a descent. So the IT budget overall is looking at a downward trend. And I just want to call to your attention, court members, that this downward trend is a result of some very significant things that I just want to take a couple of minutes here and share with you. There have been significant structural changes to IT for a number of reasons, being that when I came to office, I officially became the IT CIO July of 2014. One of the core missions that Mr. Menyos asked me to focus on was to stem the exponential growth in the cost of running IT. So in order to accomplish that, we did some structural changes. Part of that was completely reorganizing the department, including a redesign of the IT department. Through that process, we rewrote over 123 job descriptions, and the reporting structure of about 80 employees also changed because they were not properly aligned to critical and core needs of the county. But what came out of that is not really just what I said, but because we did these changes, we now were able to have clear visibility to what are true needs of IT, from personnel to technology. And on the personnel side, I wish to share that from that 2014 to now, there are 13 new critical positions that we have added to IT in a budget-neutral way. What I mean by that is that we work through repurposing of what we consider to be low-value IT positions to what we consider to be critical needs. And there are 13 of them. In other words, we did not add any money to the general fund or to the taxpayers. So those were done. I am not including the number that you saw that was presented today. Technologies, on the technology side, we also have made major changes. And the peak of those changes was the funding of our ability to really change our about 15, 20-year-old infrastructure to truly take Tarrant County into the 21st century. The reason we did that is because some of our court members and Mr. Menius did ask me to figure out how IT can be more responsive, but also how can IT innovate in order to carry forward the county. We know that many organizations rely on technology now. So last but not least, in doing these things, you would notice that we took note of the areas within IT, whether it's on the operating side, personnel side, or technology side. On those areas we thought were the core centers of spend. One of those being one of those big efforts that we implemented is to outsource our IT operations. That operation was costing the county approximately $2 million, everything inclusive, personnel, licenses, and leases. I'm glad to mention to you that next Sunday, as you probably already heard from your staff, we will go to a outsourced hosting operation, and the outcome of that effort is an $871,000 of operating costs that will be taken out of that mainframe operation. So those are a few things I want to mention here. And last but not least, over the course of the year to date, IT has completed 46 projects. Those projects have all primarily come in within budget. These are some things that are very important to share with you about our budget, but I want to recap this by saying that this is not just the success of IT by itself. It took a strong collaboration between the IT department, the county administrator, the budget director, and the auditor, who always called our attention to areas where we thought we were doing the right thing, but we need to make sure that we're working within the right controls as well. Those would be the few comments that I have.
I might add the purchasing department too.
Jack won't take me to the slaughter, but I want to say that without the purchasing department, we would not accomplish these things. And quite frankly, without the collaboration of the various county departments, we would not really be able to do it. A lot of these projects, like our disaster recovery system that is almost about to be delivered, is a clear example of how, even in the diversity of the businesses of Tarrant County, we can all come together, identify a common purpose, and execute. And for that, I want to thank you. We will continue to work with the county administrator, the auditor, the budget office, to ensure that the things that we were not able to get in this budget, we continue to find more cost-efficient ways to effect those. Thank you.
So is that your way of saying you're okay with the budget?
That's my way of saying we can move forward with our budget.
Good job.
Before we move forward on the budget, I just want to thank you for bringing these points to our attention today. If you listen to people around the county, there's a whole lot of complaining about IT and not enough recognition of the strides that have been made in reorganizing the IT department, in aligning the IT department with the strategic mission of the county, in lowering the cost of IT over the past several years, in implementing a disaster management business continuity program that we have talked about for years and have just now successfully, well, we will in the next few weeks,
About 60 to 90 days, yes.
Successfully implement that. And outsourcing the management of the mainframe. That's something we've talked about for years and years and years. These are critical success factors of the IT department. And I just want to give you credit for having done these things so that when the storms come, and they will come, you will have at least been recognized on this date for the successes that you have made. And thank you for that, Chris.
Yes, sir. I take that on behalf of our hardworking employees.
Thank you, Chris.
Is that a motion?
It is indeed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Human Resources.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Tina.
We too want to thank Debbie for all of her work. We know that this is not an easy process for her. We know that resources are limited. That said, I do feel like I need to stand up and make a couple of comments about our budget. The learning management system, which was addressed previously, did rank, I believe, second on the project list this year. This project has ranked at the top of the list the past couple of years, and no funding has been forthcoming. We continue to struggle in HR, and other departments do as well, to communicate effectively with our employees. I think we've made some strides in that direction, but to us, this would really be a tool to help us in that regard. We've had some conversations recently as we've looked at benefits and the need to try to improve or help our employees with their understanding of benefits, and which, of course, we believe in the long term certainly could help us to stabilize costs, maybe not drive down costs, but stabilize costs. So we are one department of many that are involved in training, and currently, without this system in place, what we have are various departments that have various training tools that they do have in place, some fairly antiquated, some have systems, some use Excel sheets, some do a variety of different things. So one of the items that we could address with this learning management system is that we could have centralized training. We could actually push out policies to all employees across the county. We could have centralized training, a way to push out training, to track training, which in some departments is essential for their employees who seek certifications and have to prove their recertification every few years. So again, we would appreciate your consideration of funding for this project. Again, we understand the struggle that you have trying to allocate resources, but feel like it's incumbent upon us to at least step forward and let you know that the need is still there. The second item, and Debbie and I have, Ms. Snyder and I have spoken about this, really not a concern, just an FYI. We do have, Ms. Snyder has allocated $16,000, the line item for our background checks. In a few months, we'll actually go through an RFP process to identify a new vendor. $16,000 may be exactly what we need, but depending upon the cost, charge by the new vendor, we may need more than the $16,000. We don't know at this point. We will not know for several months. And again, Ms. Snyder and I have spoken about this, but just wanted to say it publicly since I'm here.
How much is the learning system again?
It is $83,600, and the reoccurring costs year after year will be approximately that much.
So the problem is that it's a reoccurring.
Why is that? Oh, it's a cloud-based system?
Those are the estimates that IT has provided us with.
$60,000 is what they currently have as a stated reoccurring, but I think, Rich, didn't you send an update on that recently? Increasing it a little bit?
Judge, Commissioners, we had increased it to $171,000 for that first year. The reason being we had added a staff augmentation as a subject matter expert to help us implement and manage that first year.
And the recurring?
The recurring that I see right now, our rough estimate is I believe, $64,000.
So is this something where we buy licenses and it just?
Yes, sir.
It's not a cloud-based?
One of the options is a cloud-based solution that we start out with a certain amount, but we can actually increase it to 4,000 licenses.
And so the first year would be not only the acquisition of licenses, but also a full-time equivalent staff augmentation? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, sir.
And move to approve the human resource budget and put this request into a to be determined.
Second. Okay, how about just the budget?
Move to approve the budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the budget. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We'll take about a 5-minute break.
Transportation.
Really? He's asking for it back? He said he worked with us for years, so I don't know what that means. Okay. I might figure out what he's moving out of public money.
Is that what he's doing now?
Who's next? Purchasing.
Bam.
Let's go.
Let's go.
We're ready.
So are we.
Okay, so we're back in session. So the next one is going to be purchasing.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First thing before I start, just a kind of a notification, announcement. Had interviews Friday for my assistant purchasing agent position. Mary Louise, Ron Wright, Les Smith from GK's office, myself on the panel, and Melissa Lee has been named my assistant PA. She was actually attending her parents' 50th marriage tour, cruise, her entire family. And I was able to talk to her Friday and make it known that she was our selection unanimously. And actually had business cards prepared for her to pass out at the table to notify her parents and family of her selection. So she'll be a good choice for the county. This year we were able to decrease our budget again, 4.65%. There's only one concern. The purchasing board had approved our budget. We had requested a senior buyer that was grant funded or is grant funded currently by the health department to be funded by the general fund. The purchasing board did approve that. Debbie came to me about a week and a half ago and asked that we reconsider that. And since the purchasing board made that decision, that I have no authority to override that or would never think about that. So I'll turn it over to you.
What did you recommend?
That continue with this current funding source at least for one more year, which is public health.
Do I have you said you decreased your budget?
Our operating budget by 4.65%. It is chump change, but we're still paring it every nickel and dime we can.
I don't know how you get that math.
Jack, let me ask you a quick
It
question.
seems like it's going up. That's one of my questions. Your appropriation in 2017 was $2,297,000, and the recommended is $2,345,000, so that's not a reduction.
Everything but salaries.
So even that
Okay.
is that's an increase too. But not much,
The operating budget is $500 more than last year.
right?
Am I right?
Okay, yeah. Do we have a motion?
Move approval of the purchasing budget, leaving the grant-funded position where it is.
Second.
A motion, a second. Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Facilities.
I agree with the recommendation. Thank you.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Precinct 1.
Hold on.
We have included a couple of adjustments we received from the Commissioner's Office on my spreadsheet. The reduction to capital and to asphalt.
Hold on while I get there. Going through all these
Line
building budgets.
4317.
4317?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And 4329.
So 4317, that's capital, so how much is that reduced by?
280.
It's reduced by 280?
Correct. 280,000.
I figured that much. And then the other one?
300.
And which one was that? Hold on.
4329.
In addition, we've got 2 new positions, which more than likely, I can't say with a certainty because that would be wrong, but more than likely, those positions will be filled by existing employees. And if that happens, then we will eliminate the positions from which those 2 employees come, thereby keeping the head count the same.
Okay.
So I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Now, Debbie, I thought you told me what you,
Hold on. Okay. 4317.
just a second. Maybe I got it, I did get it in the right place.
Okay.
And then
4329.
Okay. Now we are in precinct 2.
Precinct 2, move for the approval of precinct 2 budgets.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any discussion, please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Precinct 3.
I move for approval of precinct 3.
Second.
We have a motion second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Precinct 4.
I want to thank Debbie for all of her hard work. I know she labored late at night doing it, but I would move approval of precinct 4.
Second.
I just want that
And I
to
didn't
all
have
have
to
a
pay
chance to
you.
settle in for a minute. We have a motion second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
That was a good one, Diddy.
Transportation.
Transportation happy. Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion second. Now, this is where we took our right-of-way down by 550 because,
Correct.
okay, and help me out with it, because I thought if we moved our bond in here, that would replace the 550 that we were bringing
We're
down.
moving the expense to the bond fund.
I got you. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, that,
Had a great day.
just like to say that on our Commissioners Court agendas for the next several weeks until we get to the September 15th, we will have an item under the briefing section that deals with the budget so that we can have budget discussions at any time during our Commissioners Court meetings.
What all have we got on our
Yeah.
to be determined list?
There are positions within the Sheriff's Department.
How many?
I'd counted 6. 1 mental health officer, 3 court security bailiffs, 2 detention lieutenants. Debbie, help me if I missed.
No, that's fine.
I also have the passport position for the county clerk. And we were going to look at the total budget for the special judges. For Judge Whitley, your comments and concerns. And
HR.
Learning system capital.
No, the HR learning
you're right,
system
it
did not.
Did not? Okay.
No, it did not,
Okay.
did not get a second in that motion. So those are the only ones that I have.
Well-
Did you see anything else?
I don't really track that. It's I rely on Helen and GK to track those. So we'll sit back tomorrow and compare our notes. Those I'm obviously agree with, but I can't tell you for sure that there's not any others.
There's going to be some other changes that we
Right.
added and we subtracted from Commissioner Brooks, your line items. So what we'll do, we'll go ahead and I think we want to listen to the tape for the sheriff to make sure that we heard exactly what the court said. But that's all that I have on mine. Saying all, there's a pretty big price tag on some of these because there's some personnel involved. So we'll need to figure that out. You okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments at this time?
That's all we have at this time, Your Honor.
We'll recess or adjourn?
Adjourn.
We will adjourn our meeting.